Joe Rogan Podcast. Check it out.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Train by day, Joe Rogan Podcast by night, all day.
What's happening, brother?
How you doing, man?
Thanks for doing this, man.
Thanks for having me.
Dude, listen, man. I've been a fan of your work for, well, first thing I ever saw that you did was Hell or High Water. But going through my friend Andrew Schultz turned me on to Yellowstone. I got a text message from him once, like at 1 o'clock in the morning. He's like, dude, Yellowstone, have you seen it? Like, no, everybody's watching it. Should I watch it? He's like, dude, watch it. So I got into Yellowstone. And it goes like, Yellowstone is fucking great, but 1923 is better. But 1883, holy shit. And on your recommendation, I finished it last night. I was up till 1:30 in the morning. I didn't sleep. I went to bed at like 4 because I was just laying around my house just thinking about it. Just going, what the fuck, man? I don't think anybody has ever nailed that time period like you did. There's nothing close. There's nothing even in the fucking ballpark. Nothing.
Well, thanks. The reason I chose to do this for a living, I was off to my third college I was going to go flunk out of, and right before I left, I'd read Lonesome Dove, Murtry's book, and then I saw the miniseries with Duvall and Tom LaVey, and I said, I want to do that. I don't know what that is, but that's what I want to do.
Wow.
So I started as an actor first because I thought that's what it was, and then I realized I'm not doing that. I'm not creating a story. And then finally, I got the cojones to quit and write my own. But yeah, 1883 was me. Yellowstone's the punk rock me. There's a fair amount of it has no plot really. Don't take my land. I want your land.
Right.
And in that, I have a lot of opportunities to poke fun, but also kind of point out different points of views and kind of really study a way of life in a world. But there's a lot of defiance in the way that I do it. It's not surprising that critics hate it because it's designed for them
Critics
to hate.
hate what? They hate Yellowstone?
And confounded by its success.
Oh, God.
They can't get their heads around why it's success. There's been New York Times has done multiple articles where they're doing like this essay on how is this shit so popular.
Oh, God. That's so funny. It's so funny that they don't get it.
1883 was me grown up saying like, hey, let's take a look back at history.
Yeah.
Let's look at us and who us is as far as the Europeans who settled this place. And let's not argue about whether they should or shouldn't have. Let's just look at what the hell they went through to do it.
Critics are less relevant today than at any time in human history. They really are. They're off so much more than they're on.
Yeah, agreed.
And most people don't buy into it at all. Like if you look at a perfect example is one of Dave Chappelle's specials. The critic score was like 3% on Rotten Tomatoes, and then the public score was 97%.
Yeah.
That's all you need to know.
That's all my shows.
Who the fuck are you? Like, who are these people? Who are these people that are critics?
I have a show called Mayor of Kingstown, which is all about literally the decay of an American city. And I think it was 21% on Rotten Tomatoes and 94% audience rating, something like that. Something bananas.
And I just don't understand why they're still employed. I mean, what is the purpose that they serve other than speaking to other completely disconnected, supposedly highbrow people that live in congested urban areas?
Yeah, and I think also that critics, and I don't know why, but they seem to feel a need to judge any project by how is it looking at the lens through today's new question morality? What should we be making movies about? And you can make a shitty movie about something that they support, and they're going to support that movie. But that's not my job. My job as a storyteller is to pick a world and look through the window and not judge it and go, hey, here's what it was.
Yeah.
And here's the decision some people made. And, for me, the holy grail as a storyteller is entertain, educate, and enlighten. Don't give anybody answers, just lots of questions to think about. That's my job. Because I can't stand to pay money and have somebody preach to me their ideas. That's the fastest way to get me out of. That's the reason I hated Forrest Gump, and I don't mean to say that. I'm going to catch a lot of shit. But this doddering fucking idiot is the only guy that can figure out the world. Everybody else around him, he's just going to go on a fucking run across America, and everyone's going to follow him, and that's going to heal the country. I just was like, what is this shit?
Well, I think back then it was novel because the idea was like like it could be so much simpler that this simple guy could figure it out, and that we're all so disconnected.
The
from
irony
the
is
solutions.
you couldn't make that movie today.
Oh, no way.
Because someone would be too offended at
Sure.
the portrayal of Forrest's character.
Well, my favorite movie that you can never make today is Tropic Thunder.
Oh,
It's a fucking great movie. I'm so glad they haven't banned it. You know, like they've done so many books, like, you know, and Tom Hanks. You know, like if you go and watch his portrayal of Forrest Gump, it's nothing compared to the way they do like that Simple Jack character in Tropic Thunder. I mean, and when he says you never go full retard, like you can't even say that word anymore.
no, but if you look at that movie, which was designed to offend, but also ridicule us taking ourselves too seriously. That's one of our jobs.
Yes.
You know, it's
Yeah.
we're all taking ourselves way too seriously, and if we can make light of this and make jokes about this, then all of a sudden it won't feel so serious, and we can be reflective.
Well, what's happened in your business has happened in my business too. The business of comedy, like comedy movies, are dead. They've essentially killed the genre. All the movies that we grew up loving, like all the movies like Something About Mary and, you know, fucking, you can go down the line all the way down to Animal House. You could never make any of those movies anymore.
And to go one step further, like comedians, since Lenny Bruce, these guys, men and women whose job it was to push the envelope as far as it can be pushed to help us look at ourselves. And you think of the greats, like the great comics, Bill Hicks, Eddie Murphy, Sam Kinison, I mean, Robin Williams. And you look at their acts. Hell, look at what's her name before she did a talk show? Joan Rivers.
Yeah.
None of their acts would be socially acceptable today. And I don't know that they were socially acceptable then, but that was their job. Richard Pryor, he
Yeah.
couldn't say 90% of what he said.
Yeah.
But you need people to sit there and push those boundaries, because art to one person is offensive to another, but you got to have it. You got to have it all.
Yeah, we say, you know, in the comedy world, we say we're the last line of defense because this is where the woke meets the wall. The woke meets the wall with stand-up comedy. You can't have woke comedy. It sucks. It's impossible. You can't, like, always punch up and cater to everybody. It's like, no. That's not what's funny. What's funny is the fucking weird things that people do and all of our hypocrisies and all of our contradictions and all the chaos about being a human being. And if you want to never make fun of marginalized groups or never make fun of protected classes or never make fun of anybody that's downtrodden or disassociated or well, you can't do that. You can't. That's not stand-up comedy. Stand-up comedy has to be everything. It has to be everything that's funny, regardless of whether or not it's socially acceptable to make fun of those things.
And I think that we need to. It's healing to laugh, right?
Yeah.
It's healing to. And by the way, if we're going to talk about race relations, who are some of the people that help push that? Who help people understand how you felt on, you know, how in the world when I'm 14 years old am I supposed to know how it feels to be African American in L.A.? How am I going to know that growing up in a small town in Texas? But then you see a comic who's from South Central L.A. make jokes about me, make jokes about living there, and you get some understanding of it.
Yeah.
You have some empathy. You have some knowledge.
Well, we're in a weird time where everybody has a say, and I don't think everybody should be able to talk. It's like, I mean, everybody should be able to talk, but through social media, that gets just broadcast en masse to the world. And you get these groups of people that they huddle up in these fucking echo chambers and they duke it out.
I think we have what's happening right now, and it's privilege. It's from a coddled. This is the wealthiest nation, society in the history of civilization.
Yeah.
And people are so coddled that they have confused feelings with rights. And your feelings being hurt is a violation of your rights, and it's not.
Yeah.
You do not have a right to never be offended.
It's worse than that. They've confused hurting your feelings with violence. Yeah. They literally say words are violence.
Yeah,
Like, well,
disagreeing with someone is violence.
You've never seen real violence then. You're talking nonsense. Yeah. Somebody said something once, and I've repeated it many times, but it's a great thing to say. The worst thing that's ever happened to you is the worst thing that's ever happened to you. Even the worst thing that's ever happened to you, you got a flat tire. Oh,
Yeah.
my God. If you had a bunch of shit happening and you get a flat tire, like, I guess I got to change my tire. It's no big deal. But if you're living this fucking sheltered life and the worst thing that's ever happened is you're a dude in a dress and someone misgenders you, you know, like, oh my God, this is violence. Like, no, this is not violence. You're a fucking guy in a dress and it's confusing, man. It's fucking confusing. If you want me to call you a girl, I'll call you a girl. But this is confusing. This is fucking confusing. This is not violence.
The other thing is they'll say now, if you disagree with someone, you're phobic.
Yeah.
When a phobia is an irrational fear of something.
Right.
So disagreeing is not an irrational fear, it's disagreement.
Right.
And we've reached a point to where people they can't even have a conversation because someone's going to sit there and scream. As soon as you hear violence or then the conversation's over.
Right. You're racist, you're transphobic, you're homophobic, whatever you are, conversation's over. They've minimalized everything. They've marginalized your position. It's interesting. It's terrible for comedy movies, though. But it's really fun for comedy, though. For stand-up comedy, it's actually fun.
Are they running with it?
Oh, my God. We're having a great time. It's like my friend Ari said it best. He said, this is a really great time for comedy because comedy's dangerous again. Because comedy didn't used to be dangerous for a long time. There's a lot of shock comics that were they were saying things just to be shocking, you know? And I certainly did that early in my career. And now, like, if you have a position to defend. If you're going to go out on a limb, you're going to make fun of something that's dangerous, you got to have that shit tight. It's got to be good. It's got to be roarious, huge laughs. It has to be something where people go, oh shit, I can't. Like Dave Chappelle's the best example of that. When he goes after something, whatever it is, it's just so goddamn funny that even though it's supposed to be something you're not supposed to talk about, it's so good that everybody has to back off, except the critics, of course.
But what makes Chappelle so good and so funny is he's going to say things that, from a point of view, is true. Like, it's rooted in some logic.
Yeah.
And he's smarter than about anyone who's going to oppose him. And he's thought through his position so completely. He can defend it. You could disagree with it.
Yeah.
But you can't say he doesn't have an opinion and it's not grounded in facts or at least well thought out ideas.
Yeah, he's hammering that shit out every night too. He's a fascinating guy. The way he's doing it, he literally will fly into a city. He doesn't even book shows. He flies into cities and just shows up at clubs and goes on after the show's over.
Really?
Yeah, or pops in the middle of a show. Like, he's done it to me before. I was in Denver once and he just showed up. I got off stage and I went into the green room and I go, what's up? What are you doing, man? He goes, oh, hey, Joe. And I go, what are you doing here, man? He goes, I knew you was in town. I thought I'd stop by. I go, you want to go up? He goes, should I? I go, fuck yeah. So I literally went out and stopped the audience. Everyone's leaving. The show was over. They were already like paying their tab, going home. And I go, yell at everybody on the stairs. Tell them to come back. Dave Chappelle's here. And the whole audience came back in. And,
Wow.
and that's how he works things out. So he just goes around and just fucks around and then slowly hammers these bits out until he gets them to this like bulletproof form. And then he puts them out on a special.
Wow.
Yeah. It's fun. It's a fun time for stand-up comedy, but it's literally the only thing that you can do without a committee. Because if you're going to do a movie, you're going to have actors, you're going to have writers, you're going to have executives, studio heads, all this shit. There's a lot of people that have their say in what's happening, or at least have a conversation about it. There's no conversation. With stand-up, it's literally just you. It's one person. How do I make fun of this? What's my angle on this? And then you work it out, you put it together, and then you present it in front of people. And if they laugh, it's good. And if they don't laugh, it's not good. And you got to figure out how to make it work.
No, that's about the ballsy art form.
It's just pure.
You are all alone.
Yeah, it's pure. I love it. And my club out here, what I also love is that we make everybody put their phones in a bag. So instead of fucking taking pictures of everything and filming everything, just be there. Just be there. Put that goddamn thing away. The phone's locked up in a yonder bag. Phone's off. Just experience a human moment. Have a good time.
I know a couple of guys that went to your club last night. They called me when I'm driving up today. They said, have you been to his club? I said, not yet. And they said, and they're from L.A., an agent from L.A. He said, they say things in there you can't say in L.A.
Yeah, like comedy.
I said, was it funny? He goes, it was hilarious. Funniest thing I've ever seen. Every one of them.
Yeah, well, that's what it's supposed to be. You know, and Louis C.K. said we built an Alamo. That's what he said. He said, essentially, because you've built the comedy Alamo. He goes, we're in a war with the cyber world. And he goes, and you built us an Alamo.
Wow.
Yeah. But that's, when I came out here, and there wasn't really a comedy club, and all these other comedians were moving out here because this was the only place we could do stand-up. It was during the pandemic.
Right.
It's like all the pieces fell together perfectly. It was like the universe opened up door after door at every step, and then all of a sudden we're here. And there was like 15 of us, and we're working in these like little rock and roll clubs and EDM clubs, and we're doing sold out shows, and the rest of the country's completely shut down. You can't even do stand-up indoors. And they all heard about Austin, that we were all out here, and then Ron White's like, you got to open up a club. And so I was like, okay, let's open up a fucking club. And then we bought this building and we actually had a building that we bought before that was owned by a cult.
Really?
Yeah, there's a documentary on the cult called Holy Hell. You should watch it. It's pretty crazy. This guy came from West Hollywood, and right after Waco, when the Cult Awareness Network started cracking down all these cults after Waco burned down and the feds killed everybody, they moved out to Austin. The cult leader changed his name, got a new name, moved to Austin, and built a theater so he could dance in front of his followers. And, and that was the theater I bought to start a club in.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, my cousins were the federal marshals in Waco, and they knew Koresh.
Wow.
And they had told the ATF, they said, we were just there 3 days ago. Like, they can be whatever they are, but they're permitted up. And they were driving down I-35, and he looked up and saw these 3 choppers, and he knew exactly what was going on. And by the time he got to the Koresh compound, those guys had already been killed. But he knew David, and he went up to maybe it was a week or two later. I can't remember how long they held up in there. But he said, let me just go talk to Koresh and see if I can get any of these women and kids out. And he did, and he walked up, knocked on the front door, and took like 30 of them out.
Wow.
Before they just torched that place.
Yeah, they did torch that place. And they denied doing it, too. There's video footage of the tanks.
Tank driving right there. Oh, what does?
Driving in and shooting flames into the buildings. They just fucking lit everybody on fire.
Yeah.
Fuck you.
Yeah.
I don't even know what started it. It was like one Fed showed up and then they got shot at or something happened.
Well, I know 4 were killed in the first when they went to hit that place. I think like 9 got shot. I know we can pull it all up and look. But,
yeah.
At that time, there was this big panic about militias. Because at the same time, you got Ruby Ridge happened right around the same time.
Right.
You had all these, and the FBI was just getting ATF was kind of getting spanked in spots, and they were trying to clean up their image or prevent whatever, and that was their mission du jour, was like get rid of all these militias.
Yeah.
And surprising little overreach on the government's.
Little overreach, but also like every cult starts the same way. Seems like a good idea. We're going to do things right. What's wrong with society? Let's fix it. Let's all commune together.
Well, they all start like this. First, you need a like a Jim Morrison adjacent looking
right
wannabe rock star actor.
Yes.
Right? Who's so wildly narcissistic and yet charming that he can convince him shit like, I need your wife.
Yes.
But I need you here to do the garden.
Yes.
And then he becomes his own god. And then he's going to pick a date where all this shit's going to go wrong. The world's going to end, and I'm going to show you salvation. That day's going to pass. And then we need another problem until they wing that out and get a bunch of machine guns.
The guy out here, his name was Jaime Gomez, and he was a gay porn star and a hypnotist. That was the guy who started. So how do you think that worked out? So one guy in like 2000 or the early 2000s he left the cult and sent out a mass email that was like, hey, this guy's been hypnotizing me and fucking me for the last 10 years. And then everybody was like, I thought it was just me. That's the guy. But when he was young, when he got old,
it looked like a model.
Oh, when he was young, he was beautiful. He was beautiful. He had like a chiseled body. He was a yoga instructor. I think that's how he started. He was an actor. He was in Rosemary's Baby. He was like an extra in Rosemary's Baby. But when he started the cult, it really just kind of started out as a yoga class, and he was very charismatic and convinced these people that there was a different way to live, and like just like that. I'm sure you've seen Wild Wild Country.
No.
You never seen that? Oh,
No.
my God. It's fucking amazing. It's a Netflix series about this cult that took over a town in Oregon.
Yes, I do know.
Yeah,
what
and
this is.
they poisoned everyone in the town. They shipped in homeless people so that they could vote. So they took homeless people and they brought them into the cult so that they would be a part of the community and they could vote. And then they just took over the fucking town. And then once they did that, they kicked the homeless people out. And it's a wild.
If I wrote that
documentary
screenplay,
series.
people would say that that's ridiculous.
Yeah, there's a lot of those.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
There's a lot of those. Well, that's the craziest thing about 1883 is that you don't have to do any dramatic embellishment. Doesn't have to be any fucking with the truth. That is literally what went down. Those people literally came here. You were telling me on the phone that what percentage of the people that made the trek across couldn't even speak English?
You know, it something like 40%. You know, they used to come in from they would come into. And of course, what our government was doing was we needed people for a multitude of reasons after the Civil War. So many of the workforce had been killed. You know, 1 million soldiers died that we know of. We don't know how many other civilians. So we needed people. We needed people to settle the West because Manifest Destiny basically said, hey, there's all this land we bought from whoever we bought it from, France, I guess, the Louisiana Purchase. And we can't settle it because every time we try, the Lakota or the Comanche kick the shit out of us. So we should send a bunch of Central Europeans and Eastern Europeans over there and let them get in the middle of it. And so in all of these, and you can look up, if you were to put it into the computer, you can pull up all of these pamphlets they would put out and ads they would put out in newspapers in Romania and Norway, obviously Ireland, did it everywhere, Germany, and said, come, free land.
Yeah.
Come get your free land. And when I started researching it, there were people that would come from areas where it was against the law to swim. They were not allowed to swim.
Wow.
No one knew how to swim.
It was against the law to swim.
Against the law to swim.
What the fuck? That seems so insane. What seems so insane, what really struck me, I mean, I did a lot of thinking about that show last night. Like it ended, I did my binge. I ended the binge at like 2 o'clock in the morning. And, at nighttime I do some of my most fucked up thinking because everyone is asleep in my house. It's just me. And I generally do most of my writing when everyone's asleep. And I was just thinking, that's 140 years ago. That's nothing. I'm 56 years old. When I was in high school, it was in 1983. So that was 100 years ago. I was a sophomore in high school. So 100 years is nothing. 100 years before that, you make your way across the country on a fucking wagon and you get free land.
Yeah.
100 years. That's so short a period of time. It's so hard for us to really appreciate how recent that is. And how fucking insane the change in this country over such a short period of time has been.
Meteoric. I
Nothing
just
like
read
it.
something in the last day or two that, and I'm going to get it wrong, but 1937 is closer to 1984 than 2023 is to 84 or something like that.
Yeah.
And if you think about the
Yeah.
gap between 1984 and 2023 and then what 84 was like, I was alive, you were alive, to now, it doesn't seem like that dramatic a change. Obviously there is internet, but you still had cars, you had phones, you couldn't take them with you, but you had them. But 1937, we haven't even made penicillin yet.
Right.
That's just 40 years.
Yeah. Trench warfare.
Yeah.
Yeah. World War I.
Yeah. No, these they came over here, they didn't speak the language. They knew nothing about the land, knew nothing about the water, it did, by the way, you can be rest assured it did not say in that advertisement in the Romanian Times, there's other people who already live there who will kill you when you show up. It didn't mention any of that. They didn't hear about the Indians till they got to Galveston, and they're buying their supplies. You need a gun? What would you need a gun? Well, the Indians. The who? What are you talking about? Who are Indians? Well, you're going to find out.
Yeah, that was a part of Empire of the Summer Moon, that these folks had just established these homesteads and had no idea. And the Comanches would show up and just slaughter them. They had no idea. They had no idea that there was even a concern, and they had to figure it out along the way.
Yeah. And and you read it in that book, and from a military standpoint, it's just an impressive achievement that Nakona decided he was going to raid all the way to Galveston. And he marched through, burned Austin, went all the way to Galveston. Everybody got on their boats, went out on their boats and watched him burn Galveston. Then they went in and looted all the stores and found these parasols. You could sit there and block the sun. And the Comanche thought, that's the freaking smartest thing. I wish we'd had fabric to do that with. So all the braves took these parachutes. And when they rode off, there's thousands of Comanche warriors with parasols of all these different colors, getting the sun off their shoulders.
Running away with umbrellas.
Yeah.
That's insane.
But what a terrifying visual that would be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I had no idea until I read Empire of the Summer Moon. And then I had the author come in. What is his name again? S.G. Gwen? Is that it? Great fucking guy. And he found out when he moved to Texas. Like he moved here and then was researching Texas history. S.C. Gwen. And when he moved here and he was researching Texas, then he was like, oh my God, like how do I not know about all this? How do I not know what this happened? How do I not know about the Texas Rangers and how they were established and why they needed them and what went down?
Yeah, it was the Wild West.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the reasons why Texas is such a crazy place. It's like this was kind of the last stand.
Yeah, and Texas was its own nation for 14
Yeah.
years, 13 years, and it's still that independence is still pretty embedded in it.
Yeah, they want to put it back on the ballot to
Every
secede.
year. This experiment hasn't worked.
Yeah. Well, what's crazy is when you think about the United States only being established in 1776 and how recent that is in human history. But the idea of a new country being established today seems insane. Like, there's no way. Impossible.
No, it's not going to. There's part of Oregon wants to secede and join Idaho. There's a section up there around Humboldt County and up in that area in California. They want the same thing. And it's understandable because you have people who, you take the eastern half of Oregon, virtually all of them are in some form of agriculture.
Right.
Right. They're ranching or they're farming or they're doing something. Same with that part of Northern California. You're
Right.
doing timber, you're growing something, whether it's wheat or whether it's whatever, you're doing something agricultural. And then you come to these big urban centers and where people do not understand where their food comes from.
Right.
I read an article, this is when I lived in LA as an actor, and there was some uproar. Some cheerleader had gone hunting and killed a deer or something. And the picture made it in the paper or somehow, made it somewhere. And there was this massive, people went nuts. And I'm flipping through the paper and I'm reading the letters to the editor that's kind of up there in the front. And they were all about this girl. And there's a picture of her. And one of them said that all hunters should be killed. How dare they go out and kill that animal? Why can't they just go get their food at the grocery store where it's made? No, someone got mad enough to write that letter and wrote it and reread it and sent it. And then it was printed, not from a sense of irony from that paper, I doubt. And I remember thinking, God, people don't even know where it comes from. They have no idea what it takes to put food on a table. Any kind of food.
No.
I don't care if you're vegan or not.
Right.
They have
It's
no
all
idea.
been given to you, and all you have to do is work and then spend your money.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I've had conversations with people while they're eating meat saying I could never hunt. Like, I don't know how you do it. Like, what are you talking about? You're eating meat. You just hired a supermarket hitman.
Yeah.
Like-
you just exported the execution.
Yeah, we're so detached, and that was why it was fascinating to watch this massive uptick during the pandemic, where the food supply got cut off for a while, and it was very weird, and a lot of people got into hunting. A lot of people got interested in it, and there was a big uptick.
Or started to want to take some responsibility, some kind of control measure.
Grow food.
Whether they get chickens in their backyard, whether they come to a ranch, and there's plenty of places where you can buy it direct to consumer. When that hit me,
Yeah.
I've got 3 steers and 2 deer in the freezer.
Right.
I've got 60 chickens. I've got a greenhouse. I didn't
Yeah.
miss a beat.
Yeah, well, that's the way to live if you could.
Yeah.
But most people are like, well, not everybody can live that way. Right. Figure out how you can.
Yeah, you can.
You can.
I did it in L.A.
Did you?
For 5 years. I went. Everything I ate was wild caught, or it was grown from. I bought it from the farm if it was a vegetable or fruit. And in L.A., it really wasn't that hard to do.
Farmers markets and stuff.
Farmers
like that.
markets for heck, you could even get, you could go get wild caught fish at the farmers market.
Right.
You could go get what farm grew this. Well, there's your kale or whatever you want. It's all right there. Like it was actually not that difficult. And I'd come back to Texas and hunt for a weekend, and that was my, go shoot 3 deer, and that's a year's worth of food.
Right.
Three animals for a year.
Yeah. Yeah, that's best case scenario if you can pull that off. But most people are just so disconnected from it and so connected to the urban world where no one's growing anything. Everything has to be brought in by trucks. I was reading this story. It's a book called Dissolving Illusions, and it's all about the introduction of vaccines, and it's about the pandemic diseases of the early 20th century. And they were talking about just the horrific conditions that people lived in these urban cities before cars, because there was no buses. So how are you getting food? How are you getting vegetables? How are you getting all these things into these cities? These people lived with terrible nutrition, basically starved to death, living in places where there's outhouses that were shared by thousands of people. Everyone's stuffed in these tenement buildings. They're all breathing congested air. Everyone's getting diseases. There's no drugs to treat them, no antibiotics to treat them, and everyone's fucked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, these, and it's been that way, by the way, for 1,200 years. As soon as massive urban areas, as soon as they sprouted up, I mean, look at the plague.
Yeah.
That's what that is.
That's where it comes from.
That's a flea-borne illness that you get because you're living in such close proximity to rats.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And why are there so many rats? Well, because there's that much vermin and filth and waste for them to feast on.
Yeah. I mean, it's nature's way of balancing things out. Nature's like, well, this is a fucking problem. Whatever you guys are doing here is not the way to do it. So have fun with this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also with the Native Americans. You look at the Comanche, you look at any of them. It was the disease that when from the first Pilgrims, all these things that Europeans brought over. I mean, it just decimated. I think cholera killed 60% of the Comanche.
Yeah, they said that 90% of the people killed in North America were killed by diseases. 90% of the Native Americans.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that story hasn't been told properly. And that's what I really appreciated about 1883. It's like you talked about, I mean, this was like the end of the Native American Empire, essentially. This was when there was still a little bit of buffalo left. There was still, they were moving Indians to reservations. Then the Indians that were out, they were resisting it, and it's just, and then these people are trying to make their way in this fucking wagon train across the country. What percentage of those people died that were trying to do that?
I mean, I don't know that there's anywhere along the Oregon Trail you can drive along, or there's markers just everywhere, and especially the further up you get into Wyoming, and the further you start getting through like the Lander Cutoff and South Pass, then they're just, and that's the ones that that got a marker.
Yeah.
So it's, how do you know?
Right.
The handcart. The Mormon Church brought a lot of people out, and they didn't have a lot of enough money to give them full wagons, even though that's what they'd promised. So they made these handcarts that people would pull from wherever they took off from, somewhere in Ohio, to try and get to Utah. And so these people pulled them by hand. They'd put their wife and their gear, their kids or whatever, and then they'd pull them, these two-wheeled carts, like chariots without a horse. And one winter they left too late and got caught in the winter. And the whole trick was, if you didn't make it to this certain spot in Wyoming by July 4th, you were not going to make it. You were going to get caught in the pass and you're going to die. And something like 25,000 people died in 1 year. Just mind-numbing statistics.
Insane.
Yeah.
Insane. And it's so interesting that the early films on the West, they never covered that. The early films in the West were like these really sort of shallow surface films that were fun movies, cowboys versus Indians, the spaghetti westerns and that kind of stuff. But no one had any sort of real understanding of what actually went down.
No, you didn't. The notion of getting free land that you could go farm with, by the way, nothing. You're going to go somewhere with nothing. Like, there's no stores. You're going to have to make everything. You have to figure it all out on your own. Who would choose that? Not a successful blacksmith. Not somebody that's got a nice, comfortable home in Maryland or wherever. And why? Why would you do that? You have to have no other option.
Right.
Right. All the people that came over from whatever European nation they came from, they didn't come for an adventure.
Right.
They came because they were fucking starving. My family came over from Ireland because of the potato famine. They didn't want to. They had to.
Right.
They were dying. So they had to come. So that's why everyone came. Desperation. Like, desperation is what settled the West, fueled by a manifest destiny, which was a cruel, very cruel, insidious idea that a bunch of politicians had that says, hey, we can either send the army out there and just go to war. And we've been doing that, and we've been getting the shit handed to us because the Lakota were, until the repeating rifle came around, the Lakota and the Comanche, the Arapaho, even the South, we did not have their skill level on a horse. Their arrows were actually more effective than our single-shot muskets. Like, they were a superior army. And stayed that way. It wasn't until we started sacking villages when the Braves were gone, when their soldiers were gone, when that dirty shit started, then it started turning the tide. And then when we killed the food source, that was the end of it.
Yeah, which is part of the wiping out of the buffalo.
Yep.
I mean, it was a commodity for sure, but it was also, there was a concerted effort to cut off their food source.
But it was also, there was a demand. The buffalo tongue was the number one delicacy in New York City.
Isn't that crazy?
The tongue.
Which nobody wants anymore.
No. And then they sold all the buffalo skins to France, and they made giant, massive, silly robes.
Well, at one point in time, one of the richest men in the world was, he dealt in beaver pelts.
Yeah, I don't doubt it.
There was fucking beaver everywhere. They wiped out most of the beaver in this country.
Yeah. But they've come back.
Yeah, they've come back, but not nearly to where they were.
No, but they've come back. It's pretty impressive how much they've come back. And it's a pretty keystone species. So wherever they are, they build enough dams and they create a pond, it creates a wetland.
Have you ever eaten beaver?
No.
It's good.
That's what I hear.
Steve
the tail
Ranella
was a delicacy.
Yeah, the tail's disgusting. We ate the tail. It's just all fat. They just were starving and they needed fat. Maybe we didn't cook it right, but Ranella cooked it as best he could. But he made like a pot roast out of the beaver hams. Yeah, it was very good.
Really?
It was like really good beef. It was delicious. It was surprisingly good. Like, not like, oh, I could eat this, but like, I want more. Like, this is fucking great. It was really good.
Really?
Yeah.
No, I think the most exotic thing I ever ate, and it was kind of a similar, I'm eating what they're serving situation, is on this ranch outside of Stanford, Texas, and we barbecued up a bunch of armadillo.
How was that?
I was so freaking hungry. It seemed good to me. This is well before I knew they had leprosy. But I checked everything. I'm good. I'm 40 years in and I'm fine.
Is there a temperature you have to kill leprosy at where you cook the food to? Like trichinosis?
Well, look, when you smoke it for like 12 hours. So I think anything just
kills everything.
Yeah.
What does armadillo taste like?
It kind of tastes like pork.
Really?
Yeah.
Like javelina then?
Yeah.
Yeah, which just tastes a lot. Well, they even look like pork.
Yeah, well, they are pork.
They're a peccary,
yeah.
Right? It's like a cousin of pig.
Yeah, somewhere. And they've crossbred, I think, with the feral hogs a bunch.
Oh, have they really?
I think.
I shot one last year, and I turned it into chorizo. It's edible.
Yeah.
It's not great.
Yeah.
But it's
the
edible.
feral hog, you don't want to eat those feral hogs.
I've eaten a lot of feral hogs. Yeah. I shot one at Tejon, turned it into sausage.
Did you?
It's good. Yeah.
Those things are a problem. I mean, they're
a real problem out here.
Oh my gosh. And the destruction that they reap on the ecosystem. I mean, that's the reason the bobwhite quail population has just plummeted. Mm-hmm. Rattlesnakes have stopped rattling
because of the hogs. Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the first things that happened when I moved out here is Ted Nugent invited me to shoot hogs from a helicopter. I was like, I guess I'm in Texas.
Yeah. Welcome.
Come shoot hogs out of a helicopter. They're just gunning them down. Have you ever seen Apocalypse Now?
No, but is that with the
Apocalypse
Tannerite?
Now. No, Apocalypse Now is Ted Nugent and this guy that calls himself Pigman, who has a show on one of the Sportsman's Channel, the Outdoor Channel. They shot like 250 plus pigs in an afternoon, and they all did it out of helicopters. And it's like da 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 da, like flying. It's insane. And you watch, you're like, how is this legal? Like, I guess it's legal because you have to do it that way. They have so many pigs. Like, here it is. This is Apocalypse Now. It's all slow mos of headshots. That's Pigman.
Dead everywhere. I don't want to put a number on it. I'm having a hell of a time. I got guys scattered everywhere, all on dead pigs, gutting them, loading them in Rangers, taking them, feed a whole lot of people.
That's the other thing. The Hunters for the Hungry. I mean,
Yeah, that's a really good.
It's
That's
an
a really
amazing
good
program.
organization.
Yeah, they shoot an incredible amount of these pigs and then feed them to people, and it is good, man. There's a guy out here named Jesse Griffiths who owns a great restaurant called Die Due in Austin, and he runs a school where he teaches people how to hunt. He teaches them first how to shoot rifles, then how to hunt, then they hunt hogs, teaches them how to butcher them and cook them, and he's an amazing chef. And this guy, I mean, if you think that wild hogs taste like shit, talk to this guy. And
Because he'll knock it out.
Oh my God! Some of the best meals I've ever eaten in my life. He cooked diver duck, which everybody says are disgusting. I've
Like
only
a
had it
scallop?
once. Yeah, I've only had
Yeah.
it once from him, because they say the diver ducks eat all the shit that's at the bottom, all
Yeah.
the muck that's at the bottom, and most people say they taste disgusting. He cooked it. It was one of the best foods I've ever eaten in my life.
Really?
Yeah. He just knows how to do it right. He's like, it's not that these things taste bad. It's just people don't have the knowledge of how to prepare them correctly.
Well, if you think about it, you can go to any gun store or pawn shop and buy a 30-year-old Remington 700 with a scope on it for $400. Box of bullets is going to cost you $30. License is going to cost you $35. You can go shoot a hog. You can go shoot a deer, which someone's got to manage them. The ecosystem's demolished, so there's nothing else doing it. So they're just going to overpopulate and disease. And you can create a year's worth of meat for $600.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And then the next year you cut it down to $300, and then the next year you cut it down to $150.
Yeah. And it's fun.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a fun thing to do.
yeah.
And it's
And you're
very
taking
satisfying.
you're taking responsibility for your own food.
Yeah. And still, there's people that think there's something wrong with that. But that's how disconnected society
Well,
is.
that's the look. I think one of the most absurd positions anyone can take is they're a vegan for an ethical reason. It's preposterous. You could do it for a medical reason, even though I don't know what that reason would be, but maybe you can't process, meat, you can't process proteins like that. But to do it from an ethical reason is absurd. And the reason I say that is I have plowed a field. It is carnage. It is 12 feet of carnage. And every single plant that you eat is going to be tilled into the ground in some capacity. So you're going to kill everything when you plow that field.
Famous conversation that Kevin Costner has in Yellowstone.
That's why I wrote it.
Yeah.
Was people have to understand. You have to take ownership.
That same thing, Ted Nugent has said this on this podcast. He
Yeah.
said, if you want to kill the most things, become a vegan.
Yeah, 100%.
If you're thinking about individual life, if you don't think that one life equals one life, if you think that small things aren't as valuable as large things, that's a totally different discussion, and that's a weird discussion. But if you think that all life is sacred, well, what about the lives of the ground nesting birds, fawns?
Yeah.
What about the lives of rodents, insects? All those things are getting demolished.
The average organic avocado farm in Central California is going to kill, on average, around 19,000 ground squirrels a year. That's not counting the billions of bees, because they're going to bring the bees up from Brazil to pollinate the trees, and then they're going to fucking die. They're not sending them back anywhere. They're not keeping them in some. No, they're gone. They're going to spray with some organic, which is probably just like compressed cayenne pepper. They're going to spray the trees. They're going to kill every bug, every plant, everything. All you got to do is drive I-5 through the San Joaquin Valley, and you'll see plenty of almonds. You'll see plenty of all these different groves. You won't see any birds. You won't see anything else.
Yeah.
They fucking killed them all.
Yeah, that's a hard pill for a
Yeah.
lot of people to swallow that think they're doing something that's ethically correct.
Well, if you look anywhere in the ecosystem, take man out of it. Virtually everything is living at the expense of another organism, to the degree that if a certain weed grows up over the grass, it's killing the grass. If the tree grows up, this little sapling grows up over the grass, it's killing the grass. If the grass grows up before the weeds, it kills the weeds, kills the flowers, kills this. Everything is in competition with everything else. There is not a vegan fish. There's not a vegetarian fish. Every single fish, every frog, they're eating another organism to survive. Every one of them. And that's what we did for as long as whenever we split from apes. That's what we did. Apes still do it. They talk about, they eat fruit. They eat fruit till they get a hold of those little freaking panzer monkeys.
Yeah.
And then they go to town, those chimpanzees.
They didn't even know about that until that David Attenborough documentary.
Yeah.
You ever see that one?
Yeah.
Where they're eating the
Oh,
eating the
dude, they
monkeys
go
in the
to
trees?
war. If you ever
Eating
wonder
them
where our
alive.
violent streak comes from,
Oh, yeah.
watch chimpanzees.
Yeah. Have you seen Chimp Nation?
No.
That's another great Netflix series.
Yeah.
Fuck. Incredible. They
Yeah.
they kill each other. And I asked the guy, I go, how often do they kill monkeys? He goes, we really didn't show how many times they killed monkeys because they do it so often.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's literally their preferred food.
Yeah.
They're
They're going to eat the leaves and the fruits and everything until they need that protein.
Yeah, they eat the fruit because it's easy.
Yeah.
But if they can find monkeys, they go after monkeys.
Yeah.
And they eat them alive. They just start chewing on them.
just-
There's a video of this monkey's like screaming while this chimp is eating him from the hips down. Just rah! You see his little face, and it just looks so much like us to watch him just get eaten alive by a chimp who also looks a lot like us. Is just so fucked.
Yeah.
That's the real nature. That's not vegan nature. That's not this bullshit utopian artificial paradise that people have created in their mind that they're doing if they're eating vegan. It's just not true. Unless you're growing all of your own food in your yard, unless you have a contained environment where you're composting and using mulch and you're making sure that everything that you grow, you're picking it yourself, you're just fencing it off to keep squirrels from eating it. If that's not the case, you're involved in murder.
But even then, you don't think you're going to have what happens when the grasshoppers come.
Right.
And they'll get through that fence.
Oh, yeah. And they'll
So then
devastate
what?
your crops. You're
Yeah.
going to have to kill the grasshoppers.
You're going to kill the grasshoppers, and then what are you going to do when the squirrel gets in? You can't fence off your trees.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do? Well, you're either going to give away a lot of your crop, which you're not going to want to do, or you're going to come up with a way to, or you're going to run the squirrel off. Okay, well, then you just killed it because you ran it out of its habitat. So it just dies a slower death.
Yeah.
So we don't get to exist without another organism fueling our existence. Period.
I know. It's such a hard thing for people to accept.
Well, I think it's because they're so dissociated. Mm-hmm. You know, I talked about it in Wind River at the very end when he's giving this speech to, I don't know if you've seen that one or not.
I didn't.
Okay. So this guy, it takes place in the wilds of Wyoming. And there's a young woman who's an FBI investigator, and she comes and she's investigating the death of a Native American woman. Culminates in a big gunfight, and she gets wounded, but she doesn't die. He visits her in the hospital, Jeremy Renner's character, who's from this area. And he says, luck doesn't live in the wilderness. It lives in the city. Whether or not your car is the one that gets carjacked, whether, someone's on their cell phone when you're walking through the crosswalk, that's luck. But out here, you survive or you surrender. Wolves don't kill unlucky deer; they kill the weak ones.
Yeah.
And that's
the reality. That's the reality of our life.
When you can walk from your condo to Erewhon and buy your $19 almond butter,
Yeah.
and never ask yourself. Now, I can tell you exactly right now how much water it takes in a state with no water to make one almond.
Right.
It takes 3 gallons.
Yeah.
So if you want to amort it out, one almond takes 3 gallons.
Isn't
Now,
that
how many
nuts?
almonds does one almond tree have? 10,000? We'll do the math.
It's nuts.
Do the math. Nothing comes without, there is an expense.
Nothing makes me crack up more than the stop oil people when they're blocking the highway with clothes made with oil. Like they have rubber.
This is one of my, drive me.
It's fucking insane.
I'm making a TV show about this
Are you?
right now. Yeah, called Landman with Billy Bob Thornton.
Oh, wow.
About the oil industry and about energy.
I love Billy Bob Thornton.
That's a gangster.
I love that dude.
Gangster.
He's great.
Yeah. It doesn't give a fuck. Does not give a fuck.
And he was great in 1883, too.
Oh, yeah.
He's great. I love that dude.
Showed up for one day. Goes, what am I doing? Doing this? Great. Just
Perfect.
Wicked.
Yeah.
Wicked. That's when I decided, I got something for you.
Nice.
There's something we can do. But people don't understand, they're mandating all these electric vehicles in California. 75% of California's electricity comes from fossil fuels. About 15% comes from wind and alternative energy. And then they still get a little from nuclear. I don't know why everyone got off nuclear. That was like
that's the best thing for the environment.
Yeah.
Believe it or not.
We are. I spoke when I was researching Landman. I reached out to some guys on MIT has a climate change board. They've got a bunch of scientists that are, all they're doing is trying to figure out what is our next energy source. Like what is a reliable energy source that's clean. And cold fusion is pretty much the thing that they've all penned as this is going to be the deal. But they think we're 30 to 40 years from having it to where it can even generate enough power. Right now, for the first time ever, they were able to create electricity through cold fusion that created more electricity than it took to create it. So they just net zeroed it. So how long before they can make enough of it, they can make it efficient enough that someone can charge us for it and it's still affordable to us? How far off? And then the infrastructure.
What's the method of cold fusion? Like, I don't even know how it's done.
I mean, it's the same.
Can you Google that? Google, like, how is cold... Because I know there was a cold fusion thing a few years ago, but they decided that it wasn't... They couldn't repeat it. But I didn't know that they've actually pulled it off now.
It's essentially you're splitting an atom, but you're splitting it in a manner that doesn't seem to create the waste. And I think that's the reason they're backing off nuclear. They know something about the waste that they don't want to tell us.
Forever. It lasts forever. And you dig holes in the ground. You got to cement it in there. Like there's spots in Nevada where they have these like fucking trenches filled with nuclear waste.
Yeah.
But there's also emerging technologies about converting nuclear waste into batteries. There was something about that there was some sort of technique that they were developing that was going to be able to take all of that stuff and convert it into batteries. But we have a reasonable fear of radiation, obviously, because it's we know like you Chernobyl's fucked. It's going to be fucked forever. Fukushima's fucked. It's fucked forever. It's fucked for as long as there's ever been people alive. It'll be fucked 3, 4, 5 times that in the future. It'll be fucked. And then we also know that they haven't been real forthcoming with some of the dangers of it, like the depleted uranium rounds they used during the Iraq War, and all these soldiers came back and they had Gulf War syndrome, and that was their babies were born all fucked up, and no one wanted to take responsibility for it. But there's been some documentaries done on it, and I think the consensus is that a lot of those cases were probably due to the depleted uranium rounds they use, because apparently those fucking things are just lethal. They just go right through tanks. Like depleted uranium rounds are the shit. But the problem is then these fucking soldiers would go to the battlefield where all this stuff had gone down, and they're breathing in, and they're absorbing all this fucking radiation, and they weren't warned.
Well, look at all the in the 50s when people used to go to Vegas and sit on the roof and watch nuclear testing. I had a professor in college that was one of those guys and got like umpteen kind of fucking different cancers and
Wasn't
died
that
from
the
it.
story about John Wayne?
Yeah.
John Wayne was
John Ford, all of them died of cancer because they kept shooting in Monument Valley where they were fucking setting all these things off.
Exactly. But did anybody definitively connect John Wayne and his cancer to that? Because I think I had read something about many people that worked on those films also got similar cancer.
Yeah.
But I mean, John Wayne looked like he smoked cigarettes and drank a lot too. It's like
I heard the guy smoked 5 packs a day.
he looked like a guy who was partying.
He was
a
on
little
like
bit.
his second pig's heart. He'd had like 8 different organ transplants in the late 60s. He was actually kind of a tank that he survived.
Did he really
all
have a
this.
pig heart?
Yes.
They really did that with him? No.
Yeah. I think
I
he
didn't
made
even
a
know they
joke
did it with
about it on the
humans.
Oscars.
Whoa. They've actually successfully transplanted pig hearts?
I mean, have him.
How did I not know this? I know they've done it with a friend of mine has another person's heart.
Yeah.
He had a heart attack and a heart transplant.
Pig valve.
Pig valves.
Pig
yeah,
valves, same
into it, yeah.
shit. Oh, I knew they were doing that. Yeah, they do artificial valves. My friend Everlast from House of Pain,
Yeah.
he can take a microphone and put it to his chest, and you can hear his fake valve going like tick, 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 tick.
Really?
Tick, tick. Yeah, it's weird. It's weird. He does it. You're like, yo, you got a fucking machine inside you keeping you alive, son.
Does it run on the energy of his own body?
It's a valve, right? So I guess it runs as the heart pumps. You know, it opens and closes just like the biological valve that you're born with.
Yeah.
But his is artificial.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it's, I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think it's titanium or something like that, like something like very durable. And like, I know they're using titanium for other body parts. They're using it for articulating neck discs. So when people get bulging discs that turn to herniating discs, and then they get degradation where it's pinching on the nerves, they have two options oftentimes. They'll either fuse you,
Yep.
which is could be fucking horrible.
Yes.
Or they'll give you an alternative, which is a articulating disc. And guys have had those, like Aljamain Sterling had one of those done and then went on to defend the bantamweight title in the UFC.
Really?
And defended it more than anybody and just fucking dominated people. Yeah, until he lost to Sean O'Malley, who's like, I think he defended the bantamweight title more than anybody. And
Really?
he won the title. And then after he won the title, he got kneed in the head during the title fight. It was kind of a bad deal. Like, he won the title by disqualification. So a lot of people hated him and they discredited him. Then he got this operation, had this disc replaced in his neck, and then they had the rematch, and he fucking dominated the dude.
Really?
With a fake disc in his neck. So it really was fucking him up. The children of John Wayne, Susan Hayward, and Dick Powell fear that fallout killed their parents.
This is from 1980 article.
Wow. 1980.
20 cast members. It says 91 had contracted cancer.
Wow. Oh my God. And this is pre-internet, kids.
And that's at that point too, 1980. So
Right, but this is, you got to think, this is like, it was difficult to track down this kind of information back then, and then to put it out on People magazine. That's pretty wild.
It was because of where they were doing St. George.
Only 137 miles from atomic testing range at Yucca Flat, Nevada. Yeah, they just blew shit up out there. Have you ever seen the map? There's a video of the map of the United States, and it's actually the map of the world, but a lot of them happen in the United States. And it shows all the nuclear tests that are happening all around the world, like when they first did it. Like, it shows the Trinity bomb, boom. And then it's like, boom, 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 boom. And then it gets into the 50s. Boom, 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 boom. Watch this. Go to the first one.
This goes on for 15 minutes. So
I
was
know,
trying
but
to
it's
skip ahead.
amazing. We don't have to watch the full 15 minutes. Can you like triple speed it or something? Doesn't it do that? We did it the other day, right? Playback speed, normal.
So two
Yeah.
is the best I could do.
Okay, so just watch a little bit of this. So the first one goes off, boom, boom. They're doing them in the ocean.
because that's great for the
It
fish.
also at the top will tell you who's doing them. So like the
Right.
first couple are us.
5 of them. So we're 5 in now. It's the United States. 8 United States. We're like, I'm not sure if it works. Let's keep doing it. These are all in the ocean, by the way. So far, the ones we've seen. Now Russia starts popping off. Oh shit, Russia's got one. Boom, they did a test, and we're like, oh bitch, we're gonna have to do some more tests now. You guys think you got a nuclear bomb, motherfucker? We got 500,000 of them. 16, 17. Now, by this time, in 1951, the United States has 24, and Russia has 3. This is 1952. I mean, here now the United States has 39. Now, look at this. We go up to 45 like quick, and then Russia goes to 8. They're trying to keep
Australia
up.
snuck some in there.
Oh, did they really?
Yeah.
Look at that. They got 3.
Or Great Britain did. They just decided to set it off in Australia.
Yeah, that's probably what they did. Look at this. The United States has got 66 now. We're just popping off. So now these are all happening in Nevada. You're seeing them all pop off in the United States, so far at least, in that same area, which has got to be Nevada. See there? Look, they're all popping off in that same area. It's all one. We're just nuking one spot of the country, and then we let gambling in.
That was 40 in like a year.
You know,
Oh my God, that's so insane.
We
so
talk
it's at
about all these things.
139.
Yeah, right here. October 1956, we're at 87.
That's so insane. And no one could tell them no. Here's the thing. It's like they are literally the people running the world back then.
And by March of 58, we're at 121.
Whoa! How
so,
nuts.
Question. So we're setting off thermonuclear weapons, and pretty soon here probably some hydrogen bombs.
There you go. 67, we're at 510.
Jesus Christ!
And we talk about things.
That's so insane.
We talk about things that warm the planet.
Yeah, that did a lot of warming for sure.
I've never heard
Literally
it. No
nuked
one's mentioned the half a 1,000 nuclear bombs we set off.
Here's the question. I know that the fallout from like meltdowns, when reactors melt down, that's pretty significant. That's a big deal. But how much of a big deal is the fallout from bombs going off? Like, there's people that live in Fukushima now, right? Or Nagasaki right now, right? They live in Japan in the areas that got hit. They live in Hiroshima. It's like it's okay there now, right? So how long is it? Like those areas where they did the test, like what's it like now? Is it fucked? Is it?
I did read at one point, I was reading a lot about all the cancer problems they were having, just like in Chernobyl, that they were having in Hiroshima and Nagasaki in those areas. And I don't know if they're still having those
Right, that was
issues
my question. Was
three
like, was
generations
this
later.
right after the bombs? Were the people that survived, that they got all that horrible radiation, and then
I think it came in waves. I think there was a lot of cancers in like the 3 to 5 years afterwards, and then again in 10, 15. We could probably look it up. But it was a continuous.
Back to this. The Russia count jumps really fast here in 1 month. It jumped. They did like 60 or so in one little area, and it looks like September of 61.
oh
You
boy,
see that? It went to 60 bombs went off.
that's
Oh,
the
right
dude. That's
here.
Khrushchev. That's the dude who banged his fucking shoe on the desk. Remember? He said, "We will bury you." See, find that. That's that. You want to think how scary things are now. You want to think of what it was like in the 1960s when Khrushchev is banging his heel on the. Let me hear it because the fucking tone of his voice.
This is beat to the rhythmic shoes out.
Oh, they made a song out of it. Of course, that's hilarious.
That's still on 2 times also.
That was a scary fucking time, and those were people that had lost millions and millions and millions of soldiers in World War II.
Oh yeah, what?
Yeah.
20 million Russians died in.
Yes, something like that.
To kindly stand again, aside once again.
We live on earth not by the grace of God. No, sir, by your grace, by the strength and intelligence of the great people of the Soviet Union and all the peoples which are fighting for their independence. You will not be able to smother the voice of the peoples, the voice of truth which rings aloud and will go on ringing. Death and destruction to colonial servitude. Away with it. We must bury it, and deeper the better. He didn't bang his shoe. So when does he bang his shoe?
It
Oh,
didn't
they
appear in
cut
their
it.
coverage, but that other video I had definitely showed him banging
Right.
his shoe.
Oh, so they edited
They
it out.
edited it.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, maybe they're like, that's a little intense. Let's calm that guy down. Let's get him a vodka.
See, there's something.
So yeah,
Yeah.
here he is
Well, he's
banging his
a
shoe.
bunch of stuff. That's like a gavel or something. Oh, that could be a shoe.
I think that's his shoe.
Looks like a shoe and it bounces.
Yeah, I think
But
that's his shoe.
that's all theater.
It is all theater, but it's a terrifying theater because
It's
they're
terrifying
actually
theater.
killing people.
Well, the way that they're controlling their own people is by threatening. They're basically saying the United States is threatening our existence.
Yeah.
And that's the exact same thing that
Yeah.
the American government said about the Soviet Union, and that's all that those nuclear testings were. It's a dick measuring. It's just like, look what we could do. What
Yeah.
we got.
It's all that's where communism goes, kids. It seems like a great idea. It seems like we should all share money. You know, we shouldn't be so materialistic, and if we just pooled all our money together, everybody would have enough and we wouldn't have to worry about anything. And then the government just tells you what your job is.
I just want someone to show me an example of it working.
It doesn't work.
Just show me one.
It works in small groups. That's where it works. If you can get a small group of bad motherfuckers,
Well, here's where it works.
you could be communists.
You could make the argument that the Plains Indians tribes were communist. You could make that argument.
right.
Okay.
Because they didn't understand possessions. They would
Well,
just
they everything is. So I'll take the Lakota for example. Everything was predicated. Your wealth was basically how many horses you had, and those horses you stole from another nation, another tribe. You know, the Lakota would steal from the Pawnee. They would steal from the Crow. Everybody stole from the Crow.
They were all raiding each other, which
yeah.
is an important point that is kind of left out of the narrative.
And it's also, and they would obviously kidnap, and one of the reasons that they did that was, these are all familial tribes, and it's survival, so we need a new bloodline to get in there.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
They also had low birth rates because of the riding of the horses. So,
and probably the low body fat too, because it's a
Right.
purely for the most part, it's a pure protein diet.
yeah, they're just eating meat.
And-
They were carnivorous completely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They would have, there were certain things, miner's lettuce and various, annual, seasonal fruits and
Stuff they could
thing
find.
that they could find. But come winter, man, that's 6 months. It's you're eating beef jerky,
Yeah.
and horses.
And that's why they're following the buffalo. And
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, that is the way to do it. Like the thing is,
but-
the people
but
that live
notice,
that way, like
communism worked in that thing because what did we remove from it? Money.
right.
Right. As soon as you
Right.
take a trinket and you assign a value to that trinket, then people need to go be able to earn that trinket.
That's such a good point.
And if you look at communism, there's plenty of rich people in communist countries, real rich. They just all work for the Communist Party.
yeah,
Right.
it's
I did a lot of research on Cuba for a project, and interestingly enough, they're given a ration of food. Every month you get this. You're gonna get a certain amount of eggs. You're gonna get a certain amount of. You're gonna get a sack of beans. You're gonna get your flour. You're gonna get your sugar. You're gonna get this. You're gonna get your coffee, and you're gonna get your rum because we'd prefer you stay nice and liquid and
Yeah.
happy, right? But you're not gonna get to choose where you live. You're not gonna get to choose your job.
yeah.
You're just not going to get to do that. And I was studying up on this thing because I was writing about a fisherman. And they live on an island, so you could think, well, they could just go out and catch fish and lobsters and eat that. No, that belongs to the state. If you are caught with a lobster, you're going to prison.
Oh Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So you sacrifice any freedom. So yeah, you may have free health care. How good is it? I don't know. But you don't get to determine your own path.
It's a gangster system. And then they have their athletics program, which is just off the charts. They produce some of the fucking craziest athletes in combat sports, particularly in combat sports. I know they're doing other things, but Teofilo Stevenson, who was the guy who was the rival to Muhammad Ali, but he never left amateur boxing. He just won the gold medal. I don't know how many fucking years he won in a row. But everybody was like, if we could get this guy out of Cuba, this is a guy that could actually test Muhammad Ali. He was that good.
Really?
And he was just in their Cuban program. And everyone was terrified of him because amateur boxers, they reach a certain level of ability and they get a good record going. And either they go to the Olympics, and if they can medal, that can ensure they get a big purse in their first few fights. Olympic gold medalist Pernell Whitaker. Yeah, crowd, America, America. But if they don't, they just get enough experience where they can go professional. But in Cuba, they never go professional. So you get guys that are 15, 16 years into a boxing career that's essentially always been professional, always been with the most elite coaches, the most elite sports drugs, like whatever the fuck they have, whatever therapies they have. They're not natural. Like you're going to take whatever the fuck we give you. And that's what they did with Russia as well.
Yeah.
And
China.
So how many times did he win the gold medal?
3 golds in a row.
Jesus Christ. 3 golds in a row. That's 12 years of gold medals.
Then all these other golds too at other events.
Yeah, all these different events. I mean, he was the fucking man. He was the fucking man. So what you're essentially dealing with is like a Mike Tyson type dude who's at like that level of like world championship caliber boxing, but you're having him fight amateurs. So everybody else is just trying to get together a career so they can go off into the professionals. This guy can never be professional. So he is a professional.
Right.
So he's the best in the fucking world, but he's just not getting paid to fight Muhammad Ali on television.
Right.
Ali might have beat him, Frazier might have beat him, Foreman might have, some of those guys might have beat him, but we never got to see it. But what we did see is like that caliber of boxing come out of Cuba. And some of the scariest guys that have ever fought in the UFC have come out of Cuba. Yoel Romero, the freakiest of freak athletes of all time, came out of Cuba.
Really?
Yeah, he's like, he never won the gold in the UFC, but he got to the fucking game when he was like 36.
Really?
Yeah, man. He's like in his 40s now and just jacked, natural.
Still fighting.
I told the story before. I apologize for people who've listened. but the UFC brought him to a doctor because he had broke his orbital bone in a fight. And they brought him to this doctor, and the doctor contacts the UFC and says, "Where did you get this guy?" And he goes, "He's one of our fighters." They go, "I've never seen a guy like him." He goes, "Yeah, he's amazing, right?" He goes, No, you don't understand. Like, I've never seen a human being like this. I've been a doctor for 35 years or whatever it was. He goes, the tendons in his eyes are 3 times larger than a normal person's. He goes, he's already healing. He goes, the bone that's fractured in his orbital is already healing. It started to heal. It's like, where'd you get this guy? Where the fuck did you get this guy? Have you ever seen him? Wait, I just want you to see what he looks like. That's Yoel Romero.
Shit.
Bro, and he's in his 40s here. In his 40s. And he's a fucking amazing guy. An amazing guy. He came in here and did a podcast with me, and Joey Diaz translated. So he can only speak limited English, but he was talking about Cuba. He was like, where you at in Cuba? There's so many guys. They're killers, and you become a machine. You become a machine. And I was like, oh my God. What that guy went through. So that is also a part of what Cuba is. They're forced into this. If you were at the best level, you get to eat 3 times a day.
Yeah.
But if you're at the other level, you get to eat twice a day, and you don't get to sleep in the good places. You get to sleep in the shit places. So all these guys are training with each other, all fighting for these spots, literally for food.
Fucking crazy.
Stevenson, then 22 years old, was rewarded with a house for himself in Havana and another for himself and his family in, I don't know how to say that, Delicias? Stevenson later recalled, I had no idea a house in Delicias was going to be so big. When I was shown the plane, I said, what is this, a bunker? The plans, rather. I said, what is this, a bunker? So they gave him stuff. They gave him, like, houses and shit.
And 2 cars.
Yeah. They would treat them well. They did that also for the Soviet athletes.
Right.
Like guys like Karelin, the guy that's another experiment. They literally called him the experiment.
Really?
You don't know who he is?
No.
I should have showed you the photo in the gym. There's a photo of him that I have out there just constantly. I need a constant reminder of what a pussy I am. And it's this photo of Karelin, who was like 6'2", 300 pounds and moved like a cat.
Oh, I know exactly who this guy is, yeah.
He would literally, his move was to pick guys up and smash them into the ground. So look at his face. Yeah. He was beating you up with the world. So everybody else was trying to wrestle. And what Karelin was doing was wrestling so that he could beat you up with the world. He's hitting you, boom, into the world with all of his weight and all of your weight. And he just kept picking people up
and just
slam them. And he would let them go back to the ground, and he'd pick them up again and slam them. And he did it to everybody. Nobody could stop it. He was that much of a freak. And his parents were little, like little folks, regular size folks, 5'5", 5'7", just little tiny folks. And he's just this fucking human cat.
He just got
just a human
double
cat.
dose of whatever their best genes were.
So that's the other side of communism. Like, they'll force you into this program, and the killers, the guys like, this is him. Look at what you do to people. These guys, that's a national champion from some country, and Karelin just got a hold of him, and he's just gonna fuck him up. Boom! So he's just throwing you into the ground over and over and over and over again. Watch how he does this. Boom! The fucking amount of power involved in that is absurd. That's a 260-pound man. And he's just hurling him around. So that's the plus side of communism. You can get some amazing athletes.
Right,
if you do it right.
You're farming athletes.
Yeah. I mean, they're essentially like the best of the best doing it that way. We could do it better here, for sure. We definitely could do it. We have the best athletes, for sure. If you looked at you watch the NFL, you watch the UFC, or watch the best athletes are right here. Even if they've moved here to become a part of this, like Francis Ngannou who came to America, the best athletes are here. It seems there's a lot of really good ones in other countries. They're real close, but man, when it comes to like super freak athletes, capitalism seems to be the way to go. It seems to be especially capitalism if you don't drug test them well. That's the
if you
best
can get
way.
a little sloppy on the drug testing, it's going to help.
Yeah, that'd be nice, guys. If I was running shit, like I would do, the UFC has USADA, and then they got rid of USADA. Now they had drugs-free sport, which is going to do a similar program, but just do it more logically in their perspective. The USADA would like sometimes wake fighters up at 4 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock in the morning the day of the weigh-ins, which is terrible. Terrible, because they're cutting weight and they're just
They're exhausted, they're dehydrated.
And now you're gonna test them on the day of a weigh-in. It's so stupid. Like, you don't have to do that. You can catch them if they're doing something. You're gonna catch them. And if they're not doing something, let them go through this fucking insane process without disturbing them. The weight cut is an insane process, and people who've never seen it before don't know how nutty it is. But I think they should be able to do some stuff. I think they should be able to do some stuff. I really do. I think it's science. I think it helps you heal better. I think there should be like rational limits of what you can and can't do. You know, I don't think you should be able to do full on like tren and steroids and wild shit.
No, but can you do peptide therapy? Can you?
No, that's my problem. That is 100% my problem.
If you look at, and I've done it. If you look at the NFL's rule of all the shit you can't take,
yeah,
like. One of those guys could go to GNC and pick something up and end up testing positive.
It happens with the UFC all the time. And it happens with guys that 100% are not taking steroids.
Yeah, they went and got some creatine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there was, who knows what they mixed it on, or the creatine spiked too high or did something.
Well, that was one thing that UFC's drug program did a fantastic job of. If you went to the USADA website, there was a full list of all of the things that if you bought, you would piss hot. So it's like whenever they find like a contaminated, because like one of the things we found out when we started on it, when we started this supplement company with my friend Aubrey and myself, when we started making this vitamin called Alpha Brain, we had a certain amount of ingredients that were in there. And so then we would get it third-party tested. And so then we get it third-party tested, and third-party tested like, you guys have this in there too. Like, what is that? Why is that in there? Well, it turns out when you're getting your stuff mixed, they're not really cleaning those barrels out real good.
Right. They're just tossing shit in. And
right. So if you're buying like fucking Super Pump from the vitamin shop, whatever it is, that has like something that's supposed to boost your testosterone, and they're making it in the same place where they're making real roids.
Yeah. Well, then you're
going to get a little. It's going to get it. Some of the stuff that works because it's roids. Right. I mean, that's the thing. Like those gas station dick pills.
It's probably just Viagra.
Not according. I've never tried them, but not according to my friend Brian, who was a gas station dick pill addict for a while. He says they're steroids. He says they have to be steroids because they make you so aggressive, and they give you so much energy. And he goes, your dick is hard as a rock. He goes, I was addicted to them. So there's just
you're going to see a big spike in sales of like Dragon Fire or whatever they call that shit after this.
They did find out that a lot of them had Viagra in it, and it's one of the reasons why they kept getting pulled. But they would get pulled, and then they'd come back with a new name. So they're all done like with foreign companies and sneaky companies. So it would be like, like Black Rhino would be one. And then like that would be like White Rhino would be the new one.
Right.
Like, you guys got rhinos? We got the white rhinos. Okay, give me one of them. And people were essentially going to gas stations and buying these wild, unknown amphetamines spliced in with Viagra, spliced in with steroids. What exactly are in rhino pills? Some rhino products contain sildenafil or tadalafil, according to the FDA.
Well,
these are respectively the active ingredients of Viagra and Cialis. Yeah. But I think they also had some other stuff in there, man. They had some other stuff in there.
Minerals, herbs, vitamins, enzymes, amino acids. It doesn't have to say what they are.
Right.
It could be anything.
Maybe also steroids.
Yeah.
Maybe also steroids. Maybe also.
Winstrol.
Yeah. There's some stuff that you could take in oral form that I guarantee that's not expensive. And if you can get people like my friend Brian, who's like completely addicted to these fucking things, he's buying them all the time. Didn't he do like reviews of gas station dick pills? Brian Redband, you're the man.
Oh, that's
he did, right? He did reviews.
Yeah, I mean, he talked about it enough. They were all reviews.
He's a character, man. This is a dude who, when Pepsi Spice got made, he developed a website called PepsiSpice.com because they didn't have the domain, so he bought the domain. So he bought Pepsi Spice and then documented him drinking Pepsi Spice all day long and horrible diseases happened to him. His life's falling apart. He's losing weight. He was making it up. He just made up this fake blog about dying while drinking too much Pepsi Spice.
Really?
Yeah, this is the dick pill guy. He's a maniac.
Did Pepsi ever go like, hey?
I think they did, and I think he backed
introduce you
off.
to our attorney.
Yeah, I think they fucked up though in not getting the domain, and this guy had the domain, and then they're concerned: is this guy actually drinking 15 gallons of Pepsi Spice a day? Is he having fucking cholera? Like, what's happening to this kid? But how did we get on this tangent? It was all about
No, we went left.
the UFC allowing peptides. Oh, yeah.
And we got there from nuclear waste, and
Yeah.
we got there from coal fusion. That's a pretty good.
It's been a nice little run.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's we're in a weird time in this country where people are so divided that they don't even want to look at the actual truth of things. If they have like an ideological position on things, they just want to only hold on to that and never open their mind up to other people's perspectives. And it's also at a time where more people have access to information than ever before. So it's so easy to change your perspective today because there's so much information. You can always get new information.
And there seems to be between both political parties, a feverish need for control that I don't ever recall. You know, you can watch the debates between there's a real funny one between Reagan and Mondale, and Reagan says at one point, you know, age, he was 74 maybe when he was running for re-election, and his age was an issue. That might be an issue in this upcoming election.
That'll be a spring chicken in this election.
Yeah, and Reagan said, he said, listen, I'm not going to allow age to be an issue in this debate. I will not hold the other candidates' youth and inexperience against him. I mean, he just turned it into a joke.
Yeah.
But it was a joke, and Mondale laughed. I think they shook hands. It was a civilized debate about what's the way to run this country. That's pretty quick right there.
He did look pretty old back then.
Campaign. I am not going to exploit for political purposes my opponent's youth and inexperience.
And Mondale laughed.
Yeah.
What a better time back then. What a better time. These two guys are in a debate, and he's just like, oh, you got me. Good job. He just took it on the chin.
Yeah.
Like a man. How come they can't do that anymore? Look, even the fucking guy.
I might add, Mr. Truitt, I might add that it was Seneca or it was Cicero, I don't know which, that said, if it was not for the elders correcting the mistakes of the young, there would be no state.
Mr. President, I'd like to head for the fence and try to catch that one before it goes over, but I'll go on to another question.
So it was a time when you really feel like, and forget political leanings, both of those guys, it seemed, you know, they had different ideas about the way to get to the same place.
Yeah.
And I think we're in a very unique place right now where no one's even talking about where we're trying to go. This is really about thought and beliefs. No one's talking policies. I haven't heard anyone talk about various policies in 4 years. What we're talking about is, which, by the way, when you're talking about what you can believe and what's this, and we're going to argue about arbitrary things that aren't arguable, really, and we keep our focus on that, and everyone's so impassioned about their position on some social issue that we have no solution to, then you don't focus on a $34 trillion debt. You don't focus on the fact that we're so reduced in our position on the world stage. There was a time when our military and our political resolve was so aligned that nobody wanted to fuck with us. And we could sit there and say, hey, guys, we're not going to have a war in Ukraine. We're just not going to do it. And they go, okay. You know, if you think about 9/11, and George W. Bush was not a very popular president at that moment in time. And people have forgotten that Al Gore and the Democratic Party, and I didn't vote for George W. Bush, they questioned, they contested that election then. They said it was rigged. They said it was this. They took it to the Supreme Court. It was we didn't have a president really for almost 2 months.
Was that the dangling chads?
Yeah, that was the hanging chads.
Hanging chads.
And then cut to, you know, a year later, and he's woefully unpopular. And then 9/11 happens, and he gave a speech, the best speech of his entire presidency, I thought, that galvanized the nation. And I remember, and I lived in L.A. at the time when that happened, and everybody they'd see a fireman or a policeman, and they'd say, hey, thank you for your service. Like, let me buy you a cup of, everybody in L.A.
Yeah.
And there was a sense of the sacrifice these guys and these men and women took on. And we were really unified moving forward against what we needed to do to protect our sovereignty and protect the people of the country. Then it got fucked up. And then it became about oil and became about a bunch of other things. And
but there was a time, that time was the best of us. That time, I remember driving to work, and I was driving down the street, and every fucking car had an American flag on it.
Yeah.
My friend Jay London used to sell them. Sell these little
But
American
I
flag
don't know.
things
Yeah,
stuck in your
everyone
window.
had them.
Everyone had them. They're
and
so
this is
popular.
Los Angeles. This
Yeah,
is
in LA, yeah.
as liberal a city as there is in
They
America.
they woke right the fuck up.
Yeah, they
and
didn't-
everybody came together, and people were nicer for a while. It was
Yeah.
interesting.
It was a really unique time.
But it didn't last. You're right. It didn't last. But also, it was like, wait, why are we going to Iraq? It got real squirrely, real fast.
Well, that's...
And the weapons of mass destruction thing and all that other stuff. It's like, God damn it. Like, we had the world's faith and love for a little bit. But we did what we do. We did what we always do.
Yeah, we found a way to make a business of it.
Well, it's what people do.
Yeah.
That's their job, unfortunately.
It's human nature, and you're not going to find it. I
Yeah.
consider you can pick the historical moment, and we can find someone who exploited it.
That's why it's fascinating to watch something like 1883, because you're seeing human beings exploiting human beings in this very raw way. Like, one thing that really got me was the robbers, the groups of robbers, because I didn't really take that into consideration either. But it wasn't just that you had to worry about the Comanche. You had to worry about these groups of robbers who would just show up and kill everybody.
That actually, if you look at statistics, bandits killed more of these immigrants moving north than people on the Oregon Trail than the Native Americans did.
Wow. I never even considered that until the show. I mean, I knew they existed, but I didn't think of them as that big of a factor
Well,
for whatever reason.
Well, it's this. It's an area with absolutely no governance, no rule of law whatsoever. None. And I think that's something that people need to be thinking about now. We've got... I always think, what am I leaving my son? What's the world like in 30 years for him? Right? And decisions made now, we sit here and break rules that are clearly established in a constitution, which has existed for a couple hundred years and held this place together. When we start manipulating that document to maintain relevance for a very short-term goal for a politician or for one specific cause, whatever that cause is, when we start manipulating that and abandoning the rule of law, when we start doing that 30 years from now, that benchmark is what's going to be used against all the people that pushed it right now.
That's what scares me right now about all this talk about primaries, about limiting people from primaries. There's been, see if you can find this, they were saying that many states have chosen to only have Joe Biden to vote for in the primaries.
And it's...
But that sounds like such a bad idea.
This is my point, where people could think of Donald Trump however they want to think of Donald Trump. It doesn't really matter who the individual is. A court in Colorado is going to essentially make a decision based upon a trial that has not happened yet. In other words, they're basically saying he's guilty of something that he hasn't been tried for, and therefore they're removing him from a ballot.
Right.
And right now, maybe the Democrats feel as though they're justified in that action because they're so terrified of what Donald Trump may do if he becomes president again. But are they thinking about what's going to happen in 20 years or 30 years? Because this has now been established. And at some point, the Republicans will gain control. They will get a majority in the Senate again. We look through history. It just swings back and forth. It's going to, for 8 years it's this, and 8 years it's that. So another party will be in control, and that party can use all of these manipulations of rules to maintain control. And that's when you start to have a dictatorship at the end of the day. Regardless of who's left, right, doesn't make a difference.
Exactly. And if you let that happen, Biden won't have challengers in North Carolina 2024 primary elections. State Democratic Party decides. North Carolina Democratic Party declined to allow any Biden challengers on the ballot for the 2024 primary. They made a similar effort in 2020, attempting to put only Donald Trump on the ballot that year.
Both of those are terrible ideas.
Both of those are terrible ideas. In order to get on the ballot, you need to have donors in the state and actively campaigning in the state. Neither of them have been here this cycle. Who are the other people?
Dean Phillips and Marianne Williamson.
How crazy is it? Who's Dean? Who the fuck are you, Dean? I never heard your voice. I never seen your face.
Minnesota.
Come on, let me see Dean. Imagine if Dean pulls it off. Maybe Dean's the man. I don't even know.
Isn't Marianne Williamson
Look at him.
like a self-help writer?
That's what it said right there. Yeah.
She's a self-help writer.
Self-help author
Yeah.
from California.
I want to think highly of everybody without prejudice, but if you tell me you're a self-help author from California, I automatically go, what? Kind of. That's like a mini.
She's gonna have to do a lot of counseling when she gets to DC.
Yeah, I mean, she gonna self-help the world? Maybe she's good. I don't know, but either one of them have almost no chance against Biden anyway, right? So
No.
why are they limiting people's choice? You should never limit people's ability to choose. I mean, maybe those people can get on a debate stage and rock the world, and all of a sudden there's a big movement behind them. But that's supposed to be what it's about, kids. That's supposed to be what the whole thing is about. If someone comes along
100%.
and they're more compelling candidate, you're supposed to get them. It's not the party is not supposed to be able to decide who the guy is against the will of the people, because that's a lot like communism, kids.
It is. It's fascist.
It is. It's fascist. It's crazy. It's crazy that you think you could do it because you think your team is right. We're the good guys.
Well, if you think you're so right, then why won't you allow your positions to be challenged so that you can prove how much better they are?
Because they have the ability to enact control.
Yeah.
And when you give people the ability to enact control, they always take it. That's why you have to always resist them moving those fucking boundaries. Because it's just human nature. You could call it evil. You could say all these different things. You could call it greedy. It's human nature to want more. And when you have a certain amount of control and you can get a lot more things done with more control, you try to get more control. And then you try to figure out strategies. What can we do in order to make it important that we pass a new law? So now we have the NDAA. Now we have the Patriot Act. Now we have this. Now we got a lot more control. Now we have the NSA spying on everybody. Whew, much more control. It's much, and every
But the
time this
problem-
happens, you get more and more.
The problem is those politicians. It doesn't matter if you're a congresswoman from Indiana or California or Texas. Yes, you were elected by a certain district and you're representing that district, but you're also representing every other citizen of the United States. You're a U.S. congressperson, okay? And you swore an oath to uphold the Constitution above and beyond everything else. And they're manipulating the document for very short-term game. And I'm not blaming, they're all doing it. And people need to wake up to that. Because they're going to manipulate it in a way that is going to look. There's plenty of countries in this world that have elections. They have now we're not a democracy, we're a republic, but they have their free elections and they got one candidate.
Yeah. That
And
was
guess
Putin
what?
in Russia, right?
That candidate always seems to win.
Crazy.
With an overwhelming majority.
Weird.
Isn't that shocking?
Crazy how that happens. And anybody who's a rabble-rouser gets shot.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Sounds perfect. It's just, we should know this by now, you know? Listen, how about you leave the document alone, we'll let you keep you insider trading. Just like, we'll look aside. I'm not hating the game. I'm not hating the player.
Did you see that? I saw a really interesting thing about these senators on both sides that have been in for 20, 30 years. They make $175,000 a year.
And they're worth
their
hundreds
net worth
of millions.
$85 million, $195 million.
They're really good investors.
Oh,
Taylor.
really? Yeah, they
That's
are.
it. They're really good investors. Some people are good at it. Okay, maybe not so good at it. Sorry. They're prescient. They're like, maybe there's a room that you can go to in the White House and you could just, the universe gives you
think
suggestions.
we've hit a point to where, and this was a pretty popular conversation in the 80s and 90s, and then it just disappeared. I think we got to start talking about term limits.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Term limits are a good idea when you see someone like Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah.
Because she's like the best at riding out that wave.
Oh, yeah.
You
With
know,
her
how about-
day trader husband?
Yeah, how about Feinstein? She rode it out until
Till
she
she
was
died.
literally dying.
Yeah.
And they're telling her who to vote for.
Yeah.
They're just pushing her out there.
I think maybe it's going to probably take 2 terms to even figure out what you're doing in the House of Representatives. So
My
you need.
favorite is Mitch McConnell.
Oh, dude.
When he just switches off. That dude just switches off.
Hey, we've got some octogenarians up in there right now.
Yeah, once you switch off once, you can't drive anymore. Okay, you're not allowed to drive. You just switch off. Okay, Grandpa, give me the fucking keys.
Yeah.
Okay, and so you're driving what? What are you doing? What are you doing? You're involved in important decisions for the entire world.
Should there be age limits?
Fuck yeah. Fuck yeah.
Or at least an aptitude test?
An aptitude test, but also dependent upon future aptitude tests and future physical fitness evaluations.
Yeah.
That's what I think. I think if you can't just say every 75-year-old is the same as every other 75-year-old. Because look at Robert Kennedy. Bobby Kennedy Jr. is like, how old is he? 69? He looks fucking great.
Fit.
He's fit. He's always at Gold's Gym. He works out in jeans for some strange reason. I don't know why he does that.
That's some old school shit.
I guess it's some
They
old school
skied
shit.
in them back in the day.
Yeah.
They'd Scotch guard their jeans and go skiing.
Yeah. That's where actually I first met him. I met him in Aspen, just randomly.
Really?
Yeah. I was up there. I don't ski. Used to ski, but my last accident, I was like, that's rad.
I did the same thing. I'm like,
that's
the
rad.
horses are dangerous.
I have a
enough.
friend of mine who has a fake knee because of it. He went skiing, he tore his knee apart, and he had to get an artificial knee.
Yeah.
Fuck that. I know it's fun. I get it. But anyway, I ran into him there, and he looks fucking jacked. Look at him.
Yeah.
That's a 69-year-old guy. Now, there's a lot of dudes that I know that are 69 that don't look anything like that. I mean, no disrespect, Ron White, but put Ron White's body next to Robert Kennedy Jr.'s body. I mean, the guy's fucking really fit. That's fake. Yeah, that one's fake. But the real ones are very impressive.
Yeah.
My point is, it's like, okay, that guy I don't have a problem with his age at all.
Yeah.
You know, he's obviously very bright. He's constantly writing books. He's a brilliant environmental lawyer. But then there's other guys, like they get to like you think of that, okay? That's only 5 years younger than Reagan in that video.
Yeah.
There's a difference.
Yeah.
There's a difference.
No, somewhere at 70,
Yeah.
you should have to take some type of aptitude test and a physical fitness test, and then maybe every 2 years after.
Yes, for sure. And maybe for driving,
I'm
too.
pretty sure after a certain age, you have to have an annual driver's test.
Is it?
I
Yeah, you
think so,
should.
something like that.
Maybe in some states it varies. I don't know. But you should definitely. Because my grandpa, before he died, he would take me out and I'd be like, oh, shit. And my grandpa had an old Buick, this big ass, was it a Chrysler? Old Chrysler, this big ass fucking car. So it was like one of those boats that, like, when you turn the wheels, like, and he couldn't see anymore. Like he didn't want to admit it, so he didn't want to not. He didn't want to not drive, but he couldn't see. It was fucking sketchy, and he couldn't drive at night at all. But he'd just take us out. We were like 7, like gripping the fucking seats, like Jesus, Grandpa.
And those old Chryslers, there's about this much play in the wheel.
Right? Yeah, you got so much play, you can't make any fast maneuvers. They don't handle it all. But yeah, that for running the fucking most important army the world has ever known. Yeah, you probably should have aptitude tests if you're going to be the president. Like there should be some way we can tell. If there's like a foolproof way, we can tell you're not falling apart. But do you really think Joe Biden would pass that test? He wouldn't have passed that test before he became president, and he's aging rapidly while he's president.
Every president in my lifetime, you've watched them. Think about some of the younger presidents, George W. Bush and Obama. They went in there in their 40s with a full head of dark hair.
Yep.
And that is not how they left.
They got scared.
I mean,
The pressure of that job must be insane.
And you know what it's like, and there's no comparing the two, but just how ragged you can get run if you're going to go do a comedy show here and then there and then there, and you're just living out of a suitcase, and then you got to say this, you got to be on.
Yep.
I mean, it takes a toll.
Yeah.
When I go direct, I mean, if I go on a 6-month, which I'm about to, a 6-month, 7-month run of directing every single day where I have to make decisions from 6 a.m. until 9 o'clock at night, and then I got to watch footage till midnight. I get 3-4 hours of sleep a night for 6 months. I'm a fucking wreck.
Well, you were
6
telling
months.
me about season 3 of Yellowstone that you essentially wrote it on Saturdays.
Yeah, I was directing a movie with Angelina Jolie in New Mexico, and they had a start date that by God they were going to start. Didn't matter, they didn't have scripts. They were going to start, and I had to, we would do a night shoot Friday night. I'd finish about 7 in the morning, and I'd come home and sleep till 2 and wake up and have coffee and write the script Saturday till 1, 2 in the morning. Wake up Sunday, do it again, finish the script, send it off.
Oh my God!
I did it 10 episodes. I did it 10 weeks in a row. Fucking killed me.
How do you keep your brain active during that time? Are you careful about what you eat? Are you drinking a lot of water?
Very.
Yeah.
Very. Yeah.
I would imagine like your body's on the edge. You can't fuck around.
I'm very, very conscious of what I eat. I try to be pretty conscious anyway, but I'm a freak when we're directing.
Do you take any nootropics or anything like that?
So I take I take a big mix of different things. I take methyl factors. I take NMN, and I'll do like a thiamycin alpha, which is a peptide that's an anti-inflammatory for your body. And I'm just really rigid. I do a B12 shot every other day on set. Just anything that I can do to keep me alert and because you'll get what they call the movie flu, where you just get run down. The hours are, it's 14, 16 hours a day.
Yeah.
And
you have deadlines and you have a budget and you have to do it that way.
I mean, the budget, we have a budget, but you've seen my shows. They let me run. So I have
the CGI in 1883. I was like, this is insane, because I don't want to give anything away, but there's a scene with a storm where you're like, oh my God, like you can do some wild shit today.
Well, the other thing is, yes, but the other thing is, I waited till a day with 60-mile-an-hour winds to shoot that.
Oh, perfect.
I let God do a lot of the CGI.
Nice.
They're like, there's a terrible storm coming in, and I said,
go.
Let's swip the schedule.
Yeah, because there's no way you could ever have done that with their hair and all the things flying around.
Yeah. It was
fucking
nuts.
great, man. It's a great show.
How about that ending?
It was rough. Like I was just walking around my house for like 2 hours afterwards.
And the funny thing is, I told the audience what was going to happen in the first scene.
Yeah, I know, that was a wild thing you did. Yeah, it's like you're waiting for it throughout all the episodes. There's only 10, so you're like, how does this go down? It definitely added a layer of anticipation. It's brilliant, man. It really is. It's one of the best shows I've ever seen.
And I shot 70% of it, 80% of it at the 4.6s.
How the fuck is Tim McGraw and Faith Hill so good?
That's crazy, isn't it?
How are they so good at acting?
Well, let me tell you what. Every singer can act, just like every comedian can act.
Dude, he's fucking incredible.
Did you ever see him in Friday Night Lights, the movie?
No.
That film and I know Pete Berg came on the show with you here. Pete was a big mentor of mine, and that to me is a perfect sports film. It's fun. If you haven't seen that movie, you got to see that movie. It's Billy Bob Thornton, and Tim McGraw plays this abusive dad in it, and it is. I mean, he's raw, but he's the well runs deep with that guy.
Well, you could tell in that movie, man, or in your show rather, you just 100% buy that he is a stone cold killer.
Yeah, and Faith, she hadn't acted before.
Incredible.
We were just hoping.
Incredible.
And she brought it.
Incredible.
Yeah.
But also, it has to help that they're a real life married couple. There's real, there's like layers of chemistry when they're on the set together.
And the subtext and it was.
And the heavy moments, I don't want to give anything away, but some of the heavy moments between the two of them, you're like, oh my God, imagine dealing with that. The fucking shit those people had to deal with.
It's insanity.
It's heavy, dude. It's a heavy show, but it's really good. And I think it's a really important thing for people to be aware of, that's a pretty, it's obviously fiction, but it's a pretty accurate representation of how it went down.
Yeah, I mean, the circumstances are imaginary, but the tools and the things, I mean, that's how they died and that's how they lived.
Yeah. When you look back at all the civilizations that have existed, that have risen and fallen, and, and the idea that that's happening to America now, like this is what's happened on this continent over the last 400 years is one of the most insane stories in all of history. I mean, there's some insane stories. Insane, empires that ruled the world for long periods of time. The Portuguese and the British and the Mongols, of course, and the Vikings. But what the fuck happened here is so crazy that there was a country full of nomadic Native American tribes that were warring with each other all the time and living off the land and living in harmony with the land. And then all of a sudden, boats start showing up. And then within 50, 60, 100 years, 200 years, it's just flooded with Europeans, like a mass invasion of a place that had people have been living on it for 20,000 plus years.
Yeah. Maybe longer. They found some, the Clovis Point that they found in New Mexico, which dated back to like 12,000 BC. And I could go on a sidebar with these archaeologists. When they find something that's the oldest, they will defend it to the death. They do not want anything older to be found.
Well, yeah, that's a real problem with Egypt, too.
But they found another point of some kind in New Mexico that dates back another 8,000 years.
Yeah,
which
they
just
found
shatters.
footprints.
Yeah, yes, that's what it
Yeah.
was. Footprints.
I think it's 22,000 years.
Yeah, it
That's
shatters.
Also, that's just what they found.
Yeah.
Like, who's to say there's not one that's 35,000
Well, we don't
years
have.
old?
Yeah, this is we're saying that the oldest thing we found is the oldest thing.
That's ridiculous.
Which is just fucking human.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, that's what they're realizing now with human civilizations, that it's very likely that there was a mass disruption of human civilization from asteroid impacts or something like that, and we had to rebuild. And that's what the pyramids are, and that's what a lot of the structures they find even in North America. And, catastrophes do happen. And I know we don't want to believe it. It's just like the vegans don't want to believe they're causing any deaths when they buy their kale.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same thing. We don't want to believe that this could ever fall apart and we could be right back to square one, right back to living like nomadic tribal people. But that 100% can happen.
Well, you know what? Einstein's famous saying when they asked him what would be the weapon of destruction in World War III, and he says, I have no idea, but I know what it is in World War IV. And they said, what is it? And he goes, sticks.
Yeah. It probably doesn't even have to be the war, though. That's
No.
the problem. The problem is we're in a fucking shooting gallery. We're spinning around in a shooting gallery of massive chunks of space debris that literally is the stuff that forms planets.
Yeah.
And it's everywhere. There's so much of it out there. There's hundreds of thousands of near-Earth objects. And there's a whole asteroid belt. And if one of them collides with another one, and one of them's coming in from some other place, and it hits one and just sends it right towards us.
Yeah.
And some of them are fucking huge. And when those things hit, that's a wrap, civilization.
Yeah.
Whatever people are left, good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck. You're going to live like barbarians for the next 1,000, 2,000 years before people reinvent civilization again.
Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see if it's reinvented the same.
I don't think it will be. I think there's a certain amount of genetic memory in people. And I think even if something horrible happened and we had to start right now from scratch and rebuild civilization, I still think we would be better off than people who tried to do that 5,000 years ago or even 10,000 years ago. I think the human, the collective human consciousness is something other than just what you know and what you've read. I think there's some shit that's in you in genetics. I think people are better at stuff now than they've ever been before. But clearly, if that's the case, whoever built the pyramids, they must have been around way longer. They must have been able to have a civilization that thrived way longer than ours.
They still can't figure out how they built it. And there's something that I just read about. If you look at its longitude and latitude, it's like a perfect 1/1,000,000th of it.
It's almost perfectly true north, south, east, and west.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And it's whoever did that probably was along the same lines that we're on. They just had way more time to do it. They had, thousands and thousands and thousands of years, where we've only had a few hundred. A few hundred of craziness, a few hundred of the Industrial Revolution, combustion engines, utilization of fossil fuels, all this shit that we're doing now, nuclear fuel, nuclear weapons. This is real recent.
Yeah.
So if they had some more time than we did, that's what explains that shit to me. And I think that if we go and then there's a few barbarian people left, a few thousand all over the planet, and they eventually redo civilization, they'll probably do a slightly better job. I think each group does a slightly better job
than the last.
But it probably takes forever. It would probably take another 4,000 or 5,000 years for civilization to really emerge again.
Are you familiar with I'm fascinated with anthropology.
Me too.
Like human anthropology. And the fact that we now know that there were 4 different human species living on the planet at the same fucking time.
Yeah.
At the same time.
Yeah, maybe more.
Yeah. If Homo erectus was still around too, you got the Denisovans, you got Neanderthal, you've got your Homo sapien, and then there was another off some Indonesian island.
Yeah, the Homo floresiensis, I think that's how you say it. Those little hobbit people.
Yeah.
Yeah. They think there's still some of those alive somewhere. There's a thing in some parts of the country, they call them the orang pendek. And in jungles, people have reported seeing these little tiny people, little tiny hairy people, like 30 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago. And so there's this myth of this orang pendek, and they never took it seriously until they found these little people on the island of Flores. And like some of these jungles are just so insanely dense, like in Vietnam and places like that. Like, who knows? There might be a small population of these things still alive today. Or
well, there's
were alive
still
100
a
years
few
ago.
uncontacted tribes. There's that one in India that every time somebody tries to go
North
there,
Sentinel Island.
they kill them.
Yeah. Well, they didn't used to. When they started killing them, there was a guy named Commander Maurice Maurice
I wanted to make a
Portman?
movie about that.
Maurice Vidal Portman. Yeah. He was a pervert. And he'd run around fondling people and drawing pictures of them, making them dress up like Roman soldiers and talk about the size of their dicks. Did you know about that? No. Yeah. It's like, this one had testicles the size of a sparrow's egg. Like he was doing science. He's a little pervert. And this guy, he was responsible for getting a bunch of them sick. And a few people died. And they even kidnapped people, and they tried to raise their kids somewhere else. I think they kidnapped some people. But that was a very hostile interaction with white people. So from then on,
they were like, "Fuck
like,
it."
You see them, start killing them. They're gonna give you, herpes, and
they're throwing spears at helicopters.
They're gonna make fun of your balls, like please. So that one guy, he just like did, air quotes science, just traveled around to all these islands and fucking with these people.
Yeah, and now they were like,
now they'll fucking kill you.
Yeah.
They will fucking kill you. They kill everybody. You can't even get out of the boat. They're already shooting arrows in your direction. And now they have metal, too, because they took one of the boats that got stranded there. They had to rescue these people that were stuck on this boat because the North Sentinel people were coming for them in the boat, and they literally had to rescue them in time. But they got onto the boat, and then the next time they saw them, they noticed that they had metal weapons.
Really?
So they think they've salvaged pieces of the boat and turned it into knives and sharpened them and stuff like that.
Really?
Yeah. It's crazy because there's only 39 of them. And they're the direct descendants of people who left Africa 60,000 years ago.
That's
and
crazy.
because there's such a small number of them on this island the size of Manhattan, they just never passed like how humans were 100,000 years ago or whatever it was, 60,000 years ago. They're exactly that. They live exactly the way people lived back then, which is really wild to see. Uncontacted tribes, man. That's one of the weirdest windows into the variability.
Who we are.
Who we are, but also the variability that you can have people that are driving around electric cars, talking on cell phones, and at the same time, some guy is sneaking up on a monkey in the jungle with a bow and arrow with a poison tip on it. And his family's been doing it that way forever.
Yeah.
Forever.
Yeah.
And they're both happening at the same time. That's kind of the wildest part of the story of the people coming to America, is that the Native American people lived in this, like, one of the things that's really, the way was so appealing. One of the things that's so interesting about the reports from back then was that people that had left modern, air quote, Western civilization and moved in with Indians and started living in Indian cultures, they never wanted to go back.
Yeah.
But whenever they took people from, like when it was Cynthia Ann Parker, when they kidnapped her when she was 9 and then they rescued her when she was a woman, she wanted to go back.
She escaped twice.
Yeah. She's like, I don't want to be, this life sucks.
Yeah.
Like, that's the life. Like, the living in the tent and fucking chasing the buffalo, that's the life. Everybody said that. Nobody wanted to go the other way.
Yeah.
There wasn't people that were dying to, like, get educated and fucking be forced into, jobs.
Well, Quanah, who was extremely smart as the last chief of the Comanche Nation, and then when he finally went to the reservation in Oklahoma and they said, okay, here you are, he was smart enough and astute enough to make a business of it. And there was a few ranchers, Sam Burt Burnett, who founded the 4-6s, and W.T. Wagner and Charles Goodnight, who needed somewhere to graze their cattle. Because that part of West Texas was having a terrible drought. Oklahoma had a lot of good grass. And they went up and talked to Quanah and said, hey, could we, graze our cattle here? We'll pay you. And he's like, you'll pay us? Yeah, we'll pay you. All right. Yeah, I'll do that. And so it became a great, partnership that they had, and did that for years. really until Congress got wind of it, and they're like, we don't need those Indian people making money. That's not. We should outlaw that, which they tried to do. And then Burke Burnett, they reached out to Teddy Roosevelt and had him come out, and he hunted wolves on the Comanche Reservation and then down at the 4-6s as well. And they convinced him that he got a 2-year stay before they finally outlawed it.
Wow.
But in that time, Quanah needed a house because he had so many people coming, to dignitaries and governors and Teddy, and no one would obviously give him a loan. So Goodnight and Burnett gave Quanah the money to build the Star House where he lived and housed people. And in his bedroom, they call it the Star House because he painted the ceiling with stars. He would sleep on the floor, not in the bed, and stare up at the ceilings on the stars on the ceiling.
Wow. Well, I think until people have actually spent a night camping, looking up at the stars where there's no light pollution at all, they don't understand it. They don't know the appeal. It's an amazing experience. It's like one of the coolest things you could ever see in your life, and you're denied it. You're denied it because of advanced technology that allows us to light the streets.
Yeah.
We lit the streets, but we cut off the majesty of the heavens because it humbles you in a way, and it grounds you in a way that's soothing. And I think that's part of the reason why there's a lot of reasons why people have anxiety, but I definitely think that a factor is we're disconnected from the universe. We're disconnected from all the things that our ancestors saw. When they would go to bed at night and they would look up, they'd be like, wow. Like before you went to bed, what you saw was wow.
Yeah.
Like, look at that.
Well, think
Look at
about,
those stars.
you've been to New York.
Yeah.
I lived there for, 6 months. And in that time, one day it hit me that I hadn't seen a star and my feet hadn't touched anything but concrete for 6 months. And I thought, I can't live like this.
That's not good for you.
But there's people who have lived their entire lives like that.
Oh, yeah. There's people. My friend Ari loves it. He loves living like that. I mean, he goes to other places, too, a lot. He travels a lot, so maybe that
those
helps.
people, that lifelong New Yorkers, that they have to record the sound of New York so that when they go somewhere quiet to sleep, they can play that shit.
Imagine
sirens and helicopters.
Camping with a guy who does that. You fucking dick. Yeah, there's something about the stars that is, to me, it's also like the ocean and the mountains in the daytime. In the daytime, the oceans and the mountains offer a similar thing. Like when you see the mountains, it's one thing to see photos of the mountains, but when you're in their presence, they look beautiful in photos, but you don't feel them.
No.
When you're driving through a mountain range and you see like snow-capped peaks and these beautiful meadows of grass and big trees, it's like, wow. It's like the most amazing art that you could ever experience. But it's nature. And I think nature has a way of getting us attracted to places that are fertile and places that would hold life. And so when you see the mountains and you see these trees and these valleys and a lake and like, this is very fertile. These fertile places are beautiful to us, just like fertile people are beautiful to us. You see women with large breasts and narrow hips and a big waist or a big butt, and you're like, oh, narrow waist and big hips. You're like, oh, she could give birth. She's fertile. Like, this is what's attractive. Perfect symmetry. Oh, she has good genes. She's fertile. Oh, look at him. He's big and tall and handsome. He's fertile. There's something beautiful about that to us. It's just nature's way of attracting it to us. So when you're denied like this thing that literally gives you a certain amount of energy, when you go through a beautiful place, there's something about it like, wow. It's like you're not just living life. You're living life in the presence of this greatness, this insane vision that you can see all around you. And I think it humbles people in a way, and it grounds people in a way. And I think the city does the exact opposite.
I agree.
Does the exact opposite. It gives you this weird energy. That's like, fuck you, hey, taxi.
Yeah, it's an angry energy. It's a there's herds and there's packs, right? Herds are the prey animals. Packs are the hunters, and the city feels full of herds, and the country feels full of packs.
Yeah, that makes sense. People much more self-sufficient. One of the more impressive things that I found when I went to Alaska once. We were in Anchorage, and we were doing shows out there. And I was like, these people feel different. They feel like more sturdy. Like, I guess if you just live in a place that gets cold as fuck and it doesn't even, like, it wasn't even dark out and it was like 2 o'clock in the morning. It was still like light outside. Like, so this is a weird place to live. And these people are literally at the mercy of nature. And they're surrounded by grizzly bears and wolves and moose. Like, everywhere you go, you could see a moose. You can see mooses. They show up on college campuses and stomp people. They're everywhere. It's like you're living in a totally different environment than the rest of the world. And because of that, the people, they're sturdier. They're like more solid. And even when you talk to them, they're just like they've gone through more to get where they are right now.
And you know what they have no interaction with? Almost none. Government.
Right.
You go to a small town in West Texas or a small town in rural Wyoming or anywhere. And, I split my time. We moved to Wyoming in 2013 before I moved back down to Texas. We still spend the summers up at our ranch there. But it's a town of 175. The driver's license office is open for an hour on Thursday. There are no public services. If you want to go to the Social Security office to get a Social Security card or turn in some paper, you're driving 12 hours to Cheyenne. So the only interaction, and this is what people in the city don't understand, the only interaction that people in true rural areas have with the government is paying taxes and the military, because most of them join the military at some point. Those are their only two experiences with the federal government, aside from the rules that the government tells them. They don't get any of the benefits that you may or may not get. There's towns in California, you go out into San Bernardino County, you go up, somewhere around Visalia in that area, and all this money that they're going to spend on roads and shit and everything else, none of that is making it there. None of it. So their perception of government is, what are you going to make me do? How much money are you going to take from me? That's their experience with government.
Right, they're not going to get anything out of it.
Nothing.
That's a wild thing to think.
Yeah, they give into it, but what do they extract from it?
Right.
If they get to 65, they get an $1,800 a month check that they've been paying. It's the worst investment in history, Social Security. The worst investment in your future you could possibly make. I'm going to give you whatever 8% of my check or 12% of my check for my entire from the day I turn 20 till I'm 65 and retired, and then you're gonna shit out an $1,800 check to me each month. What the fuck am I going to do with that?
Yeah, can I opt out of that? Are you allowed to opt out of Social Security?
You can't.
Seems like you should be.
And if you could, it would collapse because the top earners are paying for the entire thing.
Yeah,
and never, they're never getting it.
Like, there should be some sort of a social safety net for old folks, for sure, especially for impoverished people, for sure. But making people pay into it is where it gets squirrely, especially if you're not going to get anything out of it. Like, okay, like, how's this being doled out? Like,
well, at least if you're going to collect that money, if you did the same thing, if you took the same money and you put it into, and I'm not a big 401k IRA guy, but if you did, and you took that same money and invested in just the major indexes, you would take that money and multiply it 10 to 20 fold. You'd be a millionaire. You'd fuck a millionaire. And I don't know why the government doesn't at least. Well, they probably do invest it. They just don't give you any of the investment.
Yeah, I don't know. Who knows what the fuck they do.
I don't understand
My number one problem has always been with when people say, that the rich need to pay more taxes. I'm like, sure. Where's it going? Where's it going? Do you know where it's going? Do you know if the people that are taking that money in are competent? Do you know how it's being distributed? Do you have any idea where that money's going? You just going to trust these people that are so dumb that they work for the government?
Well, remember, that's the $1,300 toilet seats.
Yeah.
That's the government's the most inefficient. They don't manage our money well because it's not their money.
Yeah, they don't have to.
Yeah.
Like, whenever you have a situation where you're outside of competition, which the government essentially is, they run the show. Like, if you had some sort of a business and your business was really inefficient and always fucked things up and really had terrible strategies and could never be audited because your books were always fucked up by like millions is missing every year, there's no way you would survive. There's no way you would
you'd
survive.
be out of business.
Because someone better would come along, they do a better job, and that's what competition is all about. But as soon as you say you're the ones that get to do this, and then everybody has to pay you no matter what, no matter if you do a good job or a bad job, you don't have options. Like, hey, this one doesn't seem to be working so well, so there's a private firm that's going to take over this service. You can opt into that as well. And these people are much more efficient. And these are some people that actually run businesses, and they understand businesses, and they're going to be a publicly traded company, so they're going to be responsible to the shareholders, and they're going to make some fucking money, and they're going to do it right.
Well, Texas, I mean, this state makes money. There's no deficit here, and hasn't been for fuck who knows how long. They're trying to figure out what to do with all their surplus every year.
That's interesting. Is it because of oil?
A lot of it.
Yeah. What is the percentage from oil?
I don't know, but a lot of they're charging something. California has as much oil as anybody. They just won't extract it.
Well, California is so silly. It's such a silly. They have the highest deficit they've ever had. California's deficit. What is the California deficit now?
It's like $24 billion.
I think it's a lot more than that. I think it's more than that. I think it's something kooky. I think it was like they just announced it was the highest ever deficit.
Well, they're running people out of the state. I have more friends that have moved here in the past 5 years. I don't know an actor. None of the act. Think about this. $32 billion deficit.
That's so crazy. $32 billion for a state. For a state. That's not the country. That's a state. Yeah. One state. $32 billion deficit. That's so kooky, man. Whoo. Comptroller reported that legislators will have a record. Is this Texas? Yeah. Record surplus of $32 billion. Oh, why don't we just give it to California? Just give it there. Everybody move there. Anyway, just give it to California. Yeah, they would fuck that up. Next year would be more.
The thing that I think, there's this debate about climate change, which, by the way, climate's always changing. It was changing before we showed up.
Yeah. We definitely have an impact on it.
No, you can't have 8 billion people on a planet, right. 7 billion now, 8 billion by the time this fucking podcast is over, and not have an effect. We're going to have an effect anyway.
Yeah.
But they've found a way to make it accusatory. No one knew that this was bad. We built an entire, not just America, the world, built an entire social structure, economy on petroleum products, starting in the 1880s. And you can't just shut that off. You can, but the collapse, the amount of death that would happen, starvation, economic collapse. So it's perfectly fine to go, look, we bet on a horse that has some real complications. We need to do one of two things, or two things. We need to figure out how to access cleaner energy, and we need to figure out if there's a way to make this fuel source that we've based everything on. I mean, let's look at all the shit on your table made out of oil. First and foremost,
the wires
this thing
we're talking through, yeah, everything.
Yeah.
Headphones we're wearing,
the headphones, the soles of my shoes,
everything.
Yeah, the socks I'm wearing, everything. You can't shut that off. You've got it. You can wean yourself off of it. You can figure out how to make it cleaner. We're more likely to run out of oil before we find its pure replacement, to be perfectly honest. Doesn't mean we shouldn't try. Doesn't mean we shouldn't try to come up with a cleaner source. But we're probably more likely to put energies toward how do we refine it cleaner, how can we utilize it cleaner while we're trying to figure out what this other thing is.
Yeah, that's a good solution. The bad solution is decide that you can't talk about any of the things that you've just said, and that you have to toe the line because climate change is caused by humans, and climate change is all bad, and we have to go electric. And you have this very surface view of what the complex problem in front of everybody is. And then it becomes a thing. And it could become a thing just like 9/11 became a thing. So after that thing, like we got attacked, now we can do action, and then everybody agrees. That action's important. We need, even as ridiculous as going to Iraq. Like, why are we going over there? that's also something that will happen with climate change. If you have a thing where everybody tells you you have to comply, this is necessary, we're all going to die, and meanwhile, every one of their predictions has always been wrong. I mean, if you go back to Al Gore's Inconvenient
Kilimanjaro
Truth,
supposed to no snow by 2006 or something.
all
like
bullshit, all wrong. No one guesses it right. But that aside, the problem is you're putting in new control. You're putting in a new mandate, a new narrative. This narrative is you have to do this because if we don't, we're all gonna die. Okay, so everybody has to get on board, and our patience is wearing thin, and everybody has to get on board. Why are you driving an internal combustion engine? Why are you still okay? But also, people are making money in this conversion. You have to understand there's businesses that are set up that are being positively affected by this conversion. They're going to make a fuckload of money. And those are the ones that are going to influence people to pass legislation that mandates things and make sure that we have only electric cars by 2035.
But how are we going to propel those electric cars?
Well, how about where are you getting all the fucking conflict minerals? The craziest thing about electric cars and electric everything is cobalt mining.
And lithium, it's all in China.
It's not just in China, it's in the Congo, and they're using slaves to pull it out of the ground.
Well, where you start digging into the Congo, you start getting into some pretty precious resources there in Virunga and that area. I mean, that is a World Heritage Site. It creates like an absurd amount of our oxygen. I mean, it's an extremely important region that is unfortunately extremely mineral rich. Yeah.
And the story of how they get the minerals out. This guy Siddharth Kara came on the podcast, and he was a journalist that got embedded in these cobalt mines and got this fucking insane footage of slave labor, essentially. So people have dirt floors, they have no money, they have no food, they have no options. They're carrying their babies on their back while they're mining cobalt. So they're getting all this cobalt dust everywhere. So they're all getting poisoned. They're all of a host of fucking diseases that are coming about from this toxic fumes of this shit they're chipping out of the ground. And that's what powers all of our electric devices. That's a part of it.
But the other big problem that no one wants to talk about, and I think that the debate needs to be approached from the standpoint of we've got one side that says, show me proof that the world's going to end. I don't need to show you proof. I said it.
Right.
Do this bullshit. Okay, let's just say that we took a corner of Utah and we just solar paneled that fucker and we made enough electricity for the entire nation. Guess what we can't do? Get it anywhere. Because the grid, we do not have the pipeline of the grid. California's maxed out. They can't bring it anymore. They've got to run pipeline. They've got to run wires. They're maxed out. They can't get enough power to the cities as it is. They're doing fucking rolling blackouts. They're telling people to not charge their electric vehicles in the summer.
They said that like 2 weeks after they made the mandate for 2035.
Yeah. So maybe figure out how you're going to get the electricity to the cities.
Yeah.
And I'm a big supporter of especially there. Throw solar panels on top of everything.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you? It's free power.
Yeah. Do it.
It's free power and it does work.
It does work.
You can power your house with solar if you have a big
100%.
enough yard and you have sun out, especially in LA where it's sunny all the time.
Yeah, it's inexcusable to not do it. Every new house should have them.
Yeah, but the problem is, it's just, boy, you're dealing with so many people. That's the problem. Like if you wanted to come into California right now and you wanted to manage it correctly and you wanted to fix all the wrongs and you wanted to clean up the streets and stop all the crime, like you couldn't even do it. You couldn't even do it. There's too many people that are against you. There's too many people that no matter how badly they fail doing it in a certain direction, they're going to keep going in that direction. They're going to double down.
Yeah. And they're going to try, and now there's so many people leaving California. They're trying to come up with this new tax where if you leave California for the next 10 years, you still have to somehow pay.
Isn't that nuts?
It's nonsense. It's
nonsense. You can't do it.
No,
it's not legal. But also, you fucking criminals. Like, you suck, and you know you suck. So when people are leaving, you're like, well, we still want money. No, we're leaving because you suck. Like, that's what states are about. You get to move to a new state, and this state's got different laws. I like this one better. Bye. Yeah. That's it. We don't have an agreement where we're not paying alimony. I wasn't married to you, bitch. Like, I gotta go.
Yeah. See you later.
Gotta go. See you. Bye.
Yeah.
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 Figure it out.
I get the random California letter like, are you sure you don't owe us any money? Like, I haven't lived there in 10 fucking years. I haven't been there in 5.
I mean, when you have a $34 or $32 billion deficit,
you cast it out there, see if you can catch it.
You got to fucking send dudes out. Like, let's go.
But now they're talking about, here's one of the things that I've always found interesting, because everyone knows this and no one says it. When they talk about the top 1% of the 1%, that they don't pay income tax, the average, the guy that makes $80,000, $100,000 a year is paying a higher percentage than those guys. Well, yes, because you know what billionaires don't get? They don't get a paycheck. They don't get a W-2. All those leaders all the head of this bank or that bank, they're getting $1. That's their salary, and they're getting stocks. And until they sell the stock, we don't know what the stock's worth. Everyone talks about Elon Musk is worth 140 however many billions. No, he's not. If he's tried to sell all his stock today and get that, he would collapse all his companies. Collapse them. You can't do it. Same with Bezos, same with any of those guys. So it's paper wealth. Are they extremely wealthy? Sure. Where do they get their money from? Well, they sell 1 million shares here, they sell 1 million there. Maybe they take a line of credit out off of their shares. I don't know. But they don't get a paycheck.
Right. Exactly.
And you can't tax an unrealized gain because we don't know what it's worth. Did they find a loophole? Of course they did. They're billionaires. Yeah, they're smart guys.
They're not paying their share. But if you look at the that's the narrative in New York City. But have you ever seen the New York City tax breakdown? Like how much of the tax is paid by wealthy people?
Oh, I'm sure it's 60%, 65%.
It's an enormous percent of a small percentage of the population is paying an enormous percent of the taxes.
Well,
and it's still chaos.
Let's just say Jeff Bezos is worth. Let's just say he's worth $100 billion. And if he gets his effective tax rate down to 10%, he's paying $10 billion. So how many people making $100,000 and they're on the same thing now they're paying $10,000 on their $100,000? I'm no mathematician, but how many 10,000 times what equals 10 billion? 10,000, 100,000, million.
Isn't it 10,000 times a million?
Something like that, yeah.
Or 100 million. What is that, Jimmy?
It'd be 10,000 times. It'd be 10,000 times a million.
10 100 millions would be a billion.
Okay.
10 times 100 million.
All right.
That's a lot of money, kids.
So it takes 100 million people to make the same amount of taxes.
Yeah. And also, if their stock drops, like if they pay that much in stock and then the stock drops the next year, like what are you going to do then? And now they have to pay less, but now they have even less.
Yeah, but they can't even sell it all. He couldn't sell. Bezos could not sell 20% of his holdings without dramatically negatively affecting the stock price.
Right.
So if he sold I don't know what it's trading at, but let's say it's trading at, let's keep it round numbers, $100. Okay. If he sold his first million shares at 100, he's selling his next at 90, he's selling his next at 80, and then then it's on fucking MSNBC and now it's worth 30.
Yeah.
And then SEC calls and goes, stop trading, something's happening. Yeah, I'm trying to sell my shit. So it's mythical numbers.
It is weird. It's weird when you think about it that way. Yeah. So that's why they're not paying taxes on all that money, kids.
Because there's not money yet.
Yeah. Yeah, people don't like to hear that.
It's the
truth. They like to
truth.
hear that the problem is with the wealthy people aren't paying enough. They don't want to hear it's incompetent bureaucrats. You have a fucking gigantic machine that is very inefficient that's running this country that does not want to ever give up that position.
Yeah.
And they want your money. They want a percentage of your money. If you don't give it to them, they're going to come after you like gangsters. They're going to lock you and put you in a cage.
Yeah.
And if you owe them money, it's not good enough to pay that money back. Now you have to be punished because you owed that money.
Yeah.
It's the only kind of debt that you really get, like, fucking for sure locked up in a cage for.
Yeah. And I spent way more of my life being broke than having money. And I do get a paycheck. And Uncle Sam takes a massive chunk of it.
They take a chunk.
They take a chunk.
It's interesting. It's a lot of money. But I wouldn't mind if I thought they were doing a great job.
I wouldn't either.
I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind if the machine
thing
worked
they
well.
did, just one thing worked.
Yeah.
Just one. Let one of them work. Let one of these programs work.
Yeah. But this is a narrative that kids get when they're in college and they get introduced to Marxism. The narrative is that, it just hasn't been done correctly, and that in an equal and just society, you wouldn't have such disparity of income. And I understand that this capitalism thing that we're running is not perfect. It's not perfect, but it's the best system that we've ever seen. And the thing about what everyone's saying when it comes to equality of income, you need to take into consideration equality of effort, equality of focus. Sure, there's people that have become wealthy doing shady things and ripping people off and finding legal loopholes to extract money, for sure. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. But also, people have put in insane amounts of work and focus and dedication to whatever the fuck it is and become way better at it than other people and gotten very successful too. And their businesses have blown up and now they sell, X amount of units at Walmart and this and that. But what the fuck did that guy have to do that? And are you willing to do that? You probably aren't. So there's a competition going on. And that guy's way ahead in the regular competition, not the stealing competition, not the taking advantage of people. He's way ahead. And that guy has been an insane worker for 30 years.
Yeah.
So if you come along and say, that guy needs to pay his share, and this is the reason why the world's all fucked, well, no, you have a juvenile perspective. Part of the reason why the world's all fucked is that there are people out there that only deal in numbers. And they're just throwing numbers around and betting on this and betting on that, and they're all doing coke, and they're fucking going crazy and flying around in jets, and everybody wants the newest watch. Those people are real too.
For sure.
But there's also a lot of people that are doing the same thing you're trying to do. They just did it better, and they did it for longer, and now they're 70. And they're worth $1 billion or whatever the fuck they're worth. And he's not the evil of the world. That's just called success.
Yeah. Now, there are definitely people that are manipulating the system.
100%.
And if we decided to become a communist party tomorrow, those same thieves will be the leaders of the Communist Party.
Yeah.
They will find their way.
100%.
And then they'll be just as fucking rich.
100%. 100%.
But the guy that goes and takes the idea and builds the business and
yeah, if you have communism, you're not going to get rid of psychopaths. You're not going to get rid of sociopaths.
Or just
they're just going to integrate into
opportunists.
the opportunists. They're just going to integrate into that system. I mean, how much does that drive us nuts about politicians if we think that a politician's full of shit? It's like, oh, you're fucking bullshitting. You're bullshitting to get to that spot. And then when you get to that spot, you're going to benefit from it. So you're just playing the world. You're playing us off. And that drives everybody nuts. And it should. Because that's the problem. The problem is not a system that's in place. The problem is who exploits the system. Who fucking wants to be president?
oh god,
Who wants that job? I mean, one of the things you said to me that I really liked when we were on the phone, you were like, I'm trying to be less famous. Like, I don't want to do your show to get famous.
Yeah,
like,
no,
this is the last fucking thing I want.
No.
Like, good. That's a
so
healthy
you have
way to look at it.
The only reason to want the job, because it is so unpleasant.
It's so unpleasant.
It is either A, for the most part, you crave power that much.
Yeah.
Or B, you crave fame that much.
Yeah. You'd be the most famous, most powerful person on the planet.
Yeah.
Essentially, if you're the president of the United States.
Because there's some really, really smart, good, thoughtful people that care a lot about the country on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah.
And none of them are running for these offices.
They don't want to wade through that shit to get to that spot. That's the oddest thing about Trump, is that he just fucking like water off a duck's back. He just wades through that shit. And that's what I think drives people the most crazy. It's part of what they call Trump derangement syndrome, is not just outrage about what he has said or what he has done that's infuriated people. It's his ability to fucking brush it off like it's nothing. It's not hitting him. It's not hurting him. They want to hurt him. So then you're seeing these lawsuits now. Now you're seeing, these crimes that he's being accused of. Now you're seeing all of this shit that's going down. Like Rudy Giuliani just gets hit with a $149 million lawsuit with these two ladies. He has to declare bankruptcy. Like, this is, you're seeing all of this stuff that's happening, and they're just feverishly trying. Like, Colorado removed him from the ballot. Now he has to appeal that. Colorado removed him from the ballot because they said he was an insurrectionist. Just wild. It's wild that you get to make that decision, because if somebody else comes along and that precedent is set, it goes the other way now.
Here's the interesting thing about that. And he has not been convicted of that.
No.
So you have a court of law This is what's dangerous. And and everyone has to forget their blind hatred of Trump for a second.
Yeah, forget it and just look at the structure of our society.
Put the widget in there. Insert X is the person, right?
Right.
X has not been convicted of a crime. A Supreme Court looks at evidence that was not presented. They got it from wherever they got it from, with no defense, and makes a decision. That's dangerous shit. And it may not feel dangerous to people right now who think at any cost keep Trump from being president again. But what happens when that same methodology is used against someone that you do support? Well, once you open Pandora's box and the rule of law is malleable.
Exactly.
That's when I say I'm talking about how is the action of today going to affect the world that my son's trying to raise a child in?
Yes.
That's what's terrifying to me, is there's so much irrational, emotional behavior around our government.
And also,
you can get on The View and say whatever wacky shit you want to say, but when we're talking about courts of law,
right?
Like, everyone needs to. Our government was built. You've got an executive branch, a legislative branch, and a judicial branch, and it was built to operate very slowly. It was built to be impervious of the emotion. That's the whole reason we're a republic and not a democracy. Because the founding fathers said, you know what? People get real emotional. If they can just vote on anything, and you could look at California as an example, because it only takes like 20,000 signatures to get something on a ballot, which is how they've passed some feel-good emotional laws that have actually had some real adverse effects on that state.
Yeah.
And that's the whole reason we're a representative government. And when we can just start arbitrarily changing the rule of law and the nature of the courts, that will be used against us as a people. It will be used against us.
It certainly will be. And that's what's so disturbing about today's short-sightedness. And that's what's scary about a person like Trump. What's scary is not him. It's the reaction to him. It's the fact that he is able to brush these things off. They keep coming after him with all these different things, and none of them have really taken him out yet. And so they're just furious about it. They're so angry. And that makes them more likely to use that defense, like, we got to stop Hitler.
So the first debate in 2016 or 15 or whenever it was on CNN. And they put Trump, who at the time is, he's on The Apprentice. He's got his show. And they put him front and center. There's 2 or 3 governors up there. There's a senator up there. There's all these other, there's Rubio's up there. Jeb Bush is up there from Florida. I'm not saying that I'm just saying that we have seasoned politicians. And CNN put him front and center and said, all right, wait for these firecrackers to go off. This is going to be great. This is going to be great. And the Republican Party was freaking out. Whoa, what's going on here? And there was even debate if they were going to ratify him as the nominee at that point. And the media was sitting back going, look, the ratings are through the roof. This is great. And I think this is going to work out great for Hillary. And all of a sudden, he gets elected. And the media was complicit in that. And I think one of the things that pisses them off more than anything is that they put him there.
Yeah.
They put him there.
I think you're right. That's part of it. But it's also, he's such an easy opponent to rally people against if you're on that other side. And when people are very ideologically based, and you can connect one person to all the things that you hate, whether it's he's xenophobic, he's racist, he's this, he's that, he's going to stop, he's ignorant to climate change, this is a problem, it's a threat to our democracy, he said he'd be a dictator for a day, all these different narratives that get spread out, and then people act on that emotion. They're just very easy to manipulate when you have a guy that is boisterous, has said ridiculous things, and does talk the way he talks. It's just easy, if he's the opponent, to get people rallied up and come up with these really irrational things, like what we're talking about, like removing him from the ballot. Like, these are crazy things, like, you can't do unless a guy is actually guilty and proven of it. Like, they have to be convicted of this. And what if they go to appeal? What happens then? That takes years. Like,
there's a decent chance that the fever to get him will be the thing that gets him reelected.
I think so. I think it's sort of along the same lines as what happened with CNN during the first election. They thought that they were going to highlight how ridiculous he is, and it was going to crush him. And then Hillary was going to come along as this very competent, seasoned politician, Secretary of State, shoo-in, first woman president. Everybody's excited, and people didn't buy it.
Yeah.
They didn't buy it, and now they're terrified that it's going to happen again because Biden is way more vulnerable than Hillary. Hillary was at least a seasoned politician, the wife of one of our most famous politicians.
Very articulate speaker.
Very articulate, lawyer, knew how to handle herself. And Biden is barely there. Like, he can't debate Trump. It's not even possible anymore. It can't happen anymore. We all know it can't happen. It barely happened in 2020, but the idea of that happening again in 2024, no one believes that. No one believes that.
We're in a spot.
We're in a crazy spot. And then Bobby Kennedy drops out of the Democrats, and now he's an independent. And you're like, okay, well, that's not ideal. Like, ideal was they primary him and Kennedy wins. But then there's all there's different people that don't want that primary to take place. And so he makes this decision to become independent. I think they were going to try to block him from primaries in some way.
One of the things and it's been trending this way since the 80s, the primary system is where the wheels really start to fall off, because the primaries are controlled by the extremes of the base.
Right.
And
the registered voters of the Democratic and Republican Party.
And the more vitriolic it gets, the more it pushes both sides further.
Yeah.
And so the further we go to the extreme, that is going to be the choice.
Man, I really think Bobby Kennedy could have won. I think if he won in the primary and then it's him against Trump, I think there's a lot of people that would have voted for Bobby Kennedy. I don't know if it'd be enough to make him elected, but I think that would be a viable candidate. And
I don't know enough about him. I've seen him speak some. I think I saw him on your podcast, and he seems like an articulate guy. I don't know enough about him, but
he was an environmental lawyer forever. I mean, he's one of the main reasons why the Hudson River got cleaned up, holding corporations accountable for environmental pollution. That was what he did for the longest part before all this vaccine stuff. That was his big thing. That was his big quest, and just an incredibly knowledgeable guy. Like, when you talk to him, I mean, not perfect. He's a human being, but like a viable candidate, like a guy who would, I think, make a great leader. But they didn't want him. They don't. I felt the same way when Tulsi Gabbard was running. I'm like, okay, you got everything you want here. You got a brilliant woman who's a veteran, was deployed overseas twice in medical units, like put together people that got blown up. Congresswoman for 8 years. Articulate, from Hawaii, woman of color. You got everything. You got everything you want there, but you don't want her. Why? Because you can't control her. Because she's independent and she has like these rock solid moral values, and she's not playing ball. She's not playing ball. You don't like it, and so this best case scenario that you had, that you've always said you've been looking for, now you're ignoring that one. Well, what are you doing? What are you doing? You're playing a weird game. You're controlling what the people get to choose on. You're not just controlling once you get into office. You're controlling what the people get to choose who gets into office. And that's what fuels conspiracy theories about the Illuminati and the people that are secretly controlling the strength. You wonder why all those shows are so popular and all those Reddit conspiracy threads are so popular. They're so popular because it's obvious people are conspiring. We're not fucking stupid. We're not stupid. Like that's the whole point of the Bernie Sanders thing. Bernie Sanders, the Democratic Party, was trying to keep him from fucking ruining the primaries with Hillary.
Yeah.
And they conspired. They worked together to keep that guy out because they didn't think he was going to play ball. And he probably wouldn't have.
No.
It's a weird thing that people find these justifications and rationalizations for doing something that's completely opposite of the structure that was put in place by the founding fathers to prevent tyranny. They put this stuff in place. They set up in a very specific way that there was all these checks and balances, so it was insanely difficult for someone to become a tyrant.
Yeah. But we have the landscape now that's being laid out that's ripe for one.
Well, that's what makes it so dangerous about social media today, and that's what makes it so dangerous about having a guy like Trump, who is either loved or hated. That's it. It's either one or the other.
Yeah, there's not a lot in between.
There's not a lot of people that are like, he's all right. Just like you either love that guy or you hate that guy. And as an enemy, as like a force that you could root against, it's a natural inclination for. Look, I went to a fucking high school football game the other day, and it was Houston playing against Austin. Great game. Incredible how good these guys are in high school.
Oh, well, here,
incredible game. Incredible game. In Texas, football is a fucking religion. It was amazing. But my point is, when you go to this thing, everybody is angry at the people from Houston. And the people from Houston are angry at the people from Austin. They're like, bullshit, but that fucking call sucks. This ref sucks. These are your fucking state. This is your fellow people. They live 2 hours away. You can drive for 2 hours. You can go visit them. What the fuck? We're so tribal that we're tribal even inside our state with fucking kids playing football.
And I think a lot of it's this fucking
100%.
sorry.
100%. Yeah,
it gives equal voice to someone who you would never care what
phones
their opinion is.
and social media.
Yeah.
100%.
That's why I don't do it. That's why I'm not on that shit.
Good for you. Yeah, I wonder if I would do it if I didn't use it for my business. I find value in it. There's definitely some value in being exposed to interesting things. I'm exposed to a lot of interesting things, but you got to be real careful with that trickle. You got to be real careful about how much you turn that spigot on, because it could really fucking flood your house.
There's a lot of people living in the garage apartment over Mama's house that have nothing to do.
Yeah.
But sit here and fucking troll.
And troll and even just waste your time scrolling through things. Forget about the negative aspects of it, the people doing negative things, but just wasting your fucking time. You got to be careful, because you could like look at girls doing squats for like 4 hours. And you go, where did the time go? I didn't get anything done. And it's also dividing us, and it's creating these bubbles, these echo chambers where people get in, and I find them all the time online. I'll find someone saying something ridiculous. Like there was some post where this lady in Canada, she just did a press conference like a couple days ago where she's doing this press conference telling everybody to get vaccinated and wearing a mask at a press conference. And I'm like, Canada has a fucking time machine. They just brought us back to 2020. Like this lady was on recommending for kids that they get vaccinated with a mask on.
You know what?
On camera.
You know what's fascinating to me? This whole vaccine thing is one of the most fascinating things I've ever sat back and witnessed.
Yeah.
That again comes back to that rule of law and right of privacy, right of independent decisions about your body, all these things that are, and yet we start. If you don't get vaccinated, people are getting kicked out. They were losing their jobs.
Yeah.
And then it turns out, oh, whoops, it doesn't prevent you from getting it. It doesn't prevent you from transmitting it.
And it might have a host of side effects. Whoops.
And then it's just kind of like went away. And every now and then you'll see a commercial, get your booster. But all the you're losing your job. They were vilifying people.
They were vilifying people. And in Canada, at least, they're trying to bring it back. I can't. Watching that video was like bananas. To see this lady giving
Orwellian is what it is.
But she's wearing a mask, and there's no one near her. She's in front of a podium. She's wearing a mask.
I was saying it earlier. I see people driving by themselves.
Yeah,
wearing a mask.
Yeah, it's an anxiety thing. It's a mental illness thing as well. It's also a delusional thing because it doesn't. If you look at it scientifically, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Like those cloth masks that people wear, those like little surgical masks. They just don't do jack shit.
Well, they told us they didn't work for the first 6 weeks or 8 weeks of the deal.
Yeah.
Fauci stood up there and said, "Hey, it doesn't work. In fact, you're more likely to get it if you wear a mask because you don't know how to wear a mask," which kind of sounded like bullshit to me. But that's what he said. And then he's like, it can't hurt. And then about a month later, you have to.
Yeah.
Where's the scientific data for any of this?
I don't know what happened there. Maybe Nancy Pelosi had some mask stock.
Maybe they all did.
I mean, I get why you would think it would work. But as soon as you know that it doesn't work, we should move to science then. Because if you're saying trust the science, okay, well, the science seems to indicate that it doesn't work. So maybe we thought it worked. We did some studies. We found out not only does it not work, but there's also problems that come from wearing dirty masks. There's also a thing where you're not supposed to, if you have those like really tight ones, like those N95s or whatever, you're not supposed to wear them for long periods of time. They're not designed for that.
Well, they're cutting your oxygen.
Yeah. They're designed for short periods of time. They're also increasing the amount of carbon dioxide.
Yeah.
It's not good. And it's also your bacteria is spraying on the mask. It's growing inside the mask. You're breathing that in. Who knows what the fuck's going on there?
Science was conveniently used.
Yeah.
Again, we politicized a pandemic.
Right.
And they haven't figured out how to that genie's not fitting back in the bottle.
It was also one of the rare times where people were told not to do your own research.
Yeah.
Don't do your own research. Trust the science. Like, that was a narrative. Yeah. Like, trust who? You? Brought to you by Pfizer on fucking CNN? This is crazy. I can't believe this is even real. This is so... It's so Orwellian. It's so propaganda. Like, if it was in a film, a dystopian film about the future, you'd be like, how did they get that stupid? That seems weird that they would be that dumb. That it's like, brought to you by Pfizer. Don't do your own research. Do your own research. What are you, a conspiracy theorist? Are you an anti-vaxxer? You're the reason why people are dying. Like, you'd be like, this movie's nuts. But that's exactly what it was. The fucking White House put out a press report that said that for the vaccinated, don't worry, you've done your part. But for the unvaccinated, you're looking at a winter of severe illness and death. This is when it was mild. This is the mild strain that was killing probably less people than the flu. What are you talking about?
It's the craziest thing I've ever seen.
It's nuts. It's nuts. And now we're finding out that the government was paying social media sites and paying media to go after anti-vaxxers.
You know,
they were paying them.
The thing that I think is the greatest casualty of the past, really, I'm going to say 6 to 8 years, but with 2020, with the vaccine, with everything you go back to, and look, again, I'm not saying I'm a supporter, but I mean, when you sit here and say this is a hoax, that's a hoax. Oh, turns out it's not a hoax. This is not true. This was that. Oh, nope. Turns out that is true. That
this is
true.
Misinformation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we just try and wash it under the rug, and we just don't look over here. Look over here. Don't look at the fucking thousands of homeless in San Francisco that are all suddenly gone the day before the whatever they call the prime minister of China or premier or whatever. And they're just fucking
the
gone.
Xi Jinping thing. Yeah.
Streets are spotless.
I was just looking through my phone to try to find that video, Jamie. See if you can find it of that lady announcing that people should be boosted. God damn it, I should have saved it. But maybe it's End Wokeness on Twitter. Maybe he had it. One of those accounts that I follow.
The great casualty of this is going to be mainstream media. They're going to lose, because as soon as you lose trust in a news source, it becomes not a news source unless it's telling you what you want to hear. So now these major news publications that we all relied on for unbiased news, or largely unbiased news, are no longer that. And so all you can turn to is the one that at least you agree with.
Right.
Okay.
They become activists.
And so then, you keep dividing us. And then as we come up with pick the issue of the week that we now are confronted with that wasn't an issue a week ago. Now we're divided over that. And we just keep getting carved into smaller and smaller groups.
Yeah. And that would definitely be in the favor of people that want to keep us divided and going after each other so they can continue to tighten their grip on what we can and can't do.
Have you ever seen the Green Beret Handbook has basically a pyramid of how to overthrow a country?
Really?
Yeah.
I got to piss. Can we hold that thought?
Yeah,
Come back with the Green Beret pyramid?
Yeah.
I want to hear that. All right. We'll be right back. We're back. The Green Beret Handbook on how to overthrow a country. So how's that work?
Yeah, well, I'm going to get it wrong, but essentially it really begins with dividing a people and creating a lack of faith in the government. And the more that you can, if you can start to infiltrate institutions, like institutions of education, if you can start to, and chances are very high that, our enemies, and we have them, as the United States, we certainly have enemies that have a lot of money and a lot of technical power and time, and play the long game, and have been injecting these things for 30, 40 years into our society. But we could probably pull it up somewhere. I bet he could find a.
Well, that's the Yuri Bezmenov thing.
Yeah.
You've seen that video, right, on YouTube? Yuri
No.
Oh, you haven't? It's amazing. It's a guy in 1984. He's a defector from the KGB. He's explaining the ideological subversion that they've imparted in these American institutions, how they've done that, exactly what you're talking about, how they started injecting Marxism and Leninism, and he's talking about how many generations it takes before you destroy the morale of the country and all faith in democracy. And it's essentially what we're seeing now. But he was saying, it has already begun. This ideological subversion. And he lays it all out in 1984 in an interview.
Yeah.
You have to see it.
Paul Harvey, you know who that is?
Sure.
So he did a thing, God, back in the 60s or 70s, and he equated it to the devil. And maybe it is. Or you could also say it's just that. But he did a radio piece on how to destroy America, the social fabric of it.
Wow.
And it's as though somebody just took America, the social fabric of America from the late 60s to today. And the timeline of the things that he said. It's pretty wicked. It's pretty powerful.
Wow. I'm not shocked. I mean, if you think about all the things that we do to manipulate other countries, I'm not shocked that someone would do that and manipulate us, and that they would do it through education institutions. That's the way to do it. You get kids, and then you train them as they leave, and then they go into the workforce. They have these ideas like burned into their heads. Yeah. And that's probably what all this gender confusion shit is, this giant uptick of it. It's literally probably engineered. And I think that's also what a lot of the climate stuff is. And a lot of the different things that people are fighting over, it's not just these big financial institutions that are invested in climate change and green energy and all these different things, but it's also other countries just fucking with us. I think it's a lot of the trolling that you're seeing online is fueled by other countries. I think a lot of the narratives that get pushed are fueled by other countries, and I think that's what we would do if we're probably doing it too.
I'm sure.
I'm sure we are.
It's a psyop, right?
Yeah, I'm sure we're doing it too.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's also one of the reasons why it would be nice to be able to lock down the internet. We have to be able to stop that. So we're going to only have government-approved internet like China has. That's how China keeps us from interfering with their lives. And the only way that we know that we're going to do the right thing over here. But you know what? China's really playing. They're doing something nasty. So we're not going to let them in on our internet anymore. We're going to shut our internet down and only make it for people in North America. And everybody be like, okay, got to keep China out. Yeah, slowly but surely, if we let them, they'll try to get more and more control. And that gets fucking super sketchy. Super sketchy.
Yep.
So what did you find this Green Beret?
I mean, I went down a path, and I don't think I'm going to get there, because would the Green Beret handbook that tells you how to overthrow a government be available on the internet?
It better not be.
If you hear, play a little of that Yuri Bezmenov. I know we played it many times, but you need to hear it because it's so wild to watch him say it. You watch him say it in 1984, and back then
you pull up the Paul Harvey thing from whenever that was about
maybe
the
let's
devil.
play that. Pull that up because I haven't heard that, and I've heard the Bezmenov thing. We played it like 5 times at least.
It'll blow your mind when you hear this.
It's not good, but it also gives us a chance to right the ship. It hasn't fucking hit the rocks yet. Like, we can still come out of this. Paul Harvey.
If I were the devil.
Is this the thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
If I were the devil. If I were the prince of darkness, I'd want to engulf the whole world in darkness. And I'd have 1/3 of its real estate and 4/5 of its population, but I wouldn't be happy until I had seized the ripest apple on the tree. Thee. So I'd set about, however necessary, to take over the United States. I'd subvert the churches first. I'd begin with a campaign of whispers. With the wisdom of a serpent, I would whisper to you as I whispered to Eve, do as you please. To the young, I would whisper that the Bible is a myth. I would convince them that man created God instead of the other way around. I would confide that what's bad is good and what's good is square. And the old I would teach to pray after me, Our Father, which art in Washington. And then I'd get organized. I'd educate authors in how to make lurid literature exciting so that anything else would appear dull and uninteresting. I'd threaten TV with dirtier movies and vice versa. I'd peddle narcotics to whom I could. I'd sell alcohol to ladies and gentlemen of distinction. I'd tranquilize the rest with pills. Wow. If I were the devil, I'd soon have families at war with themselves, churches at war with themselves, and nations at war with themselves, until each in its turn was consumed. And with promises of higher ratings, I'd have mesmerizing media fanning the flames. If I were the devil, I would encourage schools to refine young intellects, but neglect to discipline emotions. Just let those run wild. Wow. Until before you knew it, you'd have to have drug-sniffing dogs and metal detectors at every schoolhouse door.
Holy shit.
Within a decade, I'd have prisons overflowing. I'd have judges promoting pornography. Soon I could evict God from the courthouse, then from the schoolhouse, and then from the houses of Congress. And in his own churches, I would substitute psychology for religion and deify science. I would lure priests and pastors into misusing boys and girls and church money. If I were the devil, I'd make the symbol of Easter an egg and the symbol of Christmas a bottle. If I were the devil, I'd take from those who have and give to those who wanted until I had killed the incentive of the ambitious. And what'll you bet? I couldn't get whole states to promote gambling as the way to get rich. I would caution against extremes in hard work, in patriotism, in moral conduct. I would convince the young that marriage is old-fashioned, that swinging is more fun, that what you see on TV is the way to be. And thus I could undress you in public, and I could lure you into bed with diseases for which there is no cure. In other words, if I were the devil, I'd just keep right on doing what he's doing.
What year was that?
It was 65, but...
Holy shit.
1965.
That's amazing. 65. Wow. April 3rd, 1965. Paul Harvey nailed it.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you can use devil as a euphemism for anything that you want.
Yeah.
But the result's the same, and we're seeing it. We're seeing that. You know, I think they said, somebody said, that all these things are bad. Work ethic, all these things are racist. Or whatever. It's mostly.
Yeah. Toxic masculinity.
Oh yeah, I've been accused of that.
Congratulations. You're on the right side. That's a fascinating one. Yeah. Defund the police. Toxic masculinity.
Yeah, that worked great.
Yeah. They're all in the same sort of category of things. Like, that seems silly. Seems silly to think that way. You need all of it. You need masculinity and femininity. It's okay. Just be whatever you are, but you fucking need it.
Yeah.
And if you want to tell those dudes that are playing football that they're toxic masculine, what else are you gonna get? Who's gonna play football other than like super aggressive alpha males? What are you talking about?
But why is that?
It's not toxic.
That's not toxic.
No, it's just natural masculine behavior.
Yeah.
It's not toxic. What about toxic? It's all stupid. That term as applied, it's like.
But these are all terms that have been created. It's fascinating that language is being reinvented before our eyes.
Yeah.
There's all these new words that are just meant to keep one person from disagreeing with another person's position. Mm-hmm. I love microaggressions.
That's a great one.
Just like little bitty. That was a microaggression.
Yeah, and you can call people out on it. I called them out on this microaggression. Like, what?
I don't think I've ever been guilty. I don't think anyone's ever been curious about my, if I'm upset at you, you're gonna fucking know it.
Yeah, that's how it should be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things I really loved about that Ronald Reagan, Walter Mondale thing. Like, looking Walter Mondale laughing when Ronald Reagan got him with that. It's
yeah,
funny
but
line.
they had respect for each other. They completely disagreed policy-wise.
Yeah.
But
what changed? What changed in us?
So there was a, and this guy's a wizard on the computer, so he'll find it for me. There's a guy that wrote a book. I have not read it. I just read this passage. I think the New York Times or Atlantic or somebody wrote about this. And he's either he's a political writer, and I can't remember his name. Book was written in the 90s, and he talked about the fundamental difference between liberalism and conservatism, and the reason that it's destined to continue moving out to these extremes, and that there can't ever be any compromise. And essentially, it stated that the liberal point of view was that crime and all these social ills, it's a social construct, and that if you could find a way to level the playing field for everybody, that crime would be eliminated, all these issues would go away, poverty would go away, all the social ills that we have would disappear if everyone had the same opportunities and the same stuff. The flip side of that is the conservative view, which is there's evil in the world, there's good in the world. We're going to try and manage the evil as best we can and create an opportunity for people to succeed, or they can fuck up, and best of luck. One side seems naive, one side seems extremely harsh, but those are the beliefs, and that side can never compromise with this side, and vice versa, because you're abandoning your own ideology.
Yeah, that's essentially it. And you're also seeing now, this is a weird one. I was watching this clip that I saw on YouTube of Tucker Carlson on Tim Pool's show talking about aliens. And he's talking about it from like almost like a religious perspective. He's like, I think what they're essentially saying is that there's he was talking about good and evil. See if you can find the clip. He's talking about good and evil, and he's talking about it in relationship to UFOs, and that they've always been here. So it's like, are you trying to say, what does he know? And can you say what you know? Like, why do you think this? And are you saying that, a lot of the talk of, angels and devils in the Bible and good and evil, that it actually manifests itself in physical form, and we don't know what it looks like because we haven't seen it, but when we do see it, we think it's a UFO, so we think it's from another planet, but it's really just evil, or really just good. So it's angels and devils. Is that what you're saying? Because if that's what you're saying, boy, that's a fucking freaky argument, because that's one of the weirdest arguments about the UFO thing, is that we are essentially containers of souls, and that what this planet is for these beings is they mine souls here, and that they develop souls here, and that all of our motivations for existing and all of our ego and all of our ambition is really just a way to carry that soul as a vessel, and that
they then harvest.
Well, I don't know. I don't understand what the argument is.
That sounds like what would have been, what should have been the sequel to Matrix instead of what was.
Right.
That would have been a better version.
That's how artificial intelligence is created. That's how life is created. Much how a bee creates a bee colony, they create a bee hive. Inside the hive, the queen lays the larva. Everyone knows how to do it, and they all do it that way. Maybe the soul being in this biological vehicle and given this intelligence and this desire to achieve and to pursue technological innovations and all these different things that human beings do allows them to get to the point where we're at right now, where they create artificial intelligence. And what these UAPs and UFOs that are appearing in greater numbers and being reported by all these fighter jet pilots and all this, maybe what they're doing is they're witnessing the farmers who are coming by to watch their creation give birth to this thing, which is them.
Which would be AI.
AI, which is not artificial. The artificial is the wrong word. A new form of life. A life that is not based in biology and breeding through sperm and cells and eggs, but instead completely technological and able to self-reproduce and able to create its own version of itself that's far superior to the one that initially created it. And that it would constantly do that. And that's what the universe is filled with. That what we are, we're just this fucking caterpillar that's making a cocoon, and we don't even know what we're doing. And we're going to give birth to this butterfly. And that's what the whole human race is about. And that's the sinister aspect. That's what good and evil and all these different things playing off against each other is, that we need this constant competition. We're always searching for utopia, searching for that meadow we can retire in. But it's like this strife and this struggle is what makes us continue to push society further and further until this thing is born. Listen to what Tucker says.
It's my personal belief, based on a fair amount of evidence, that they're not aliens. They've always been here. And I do think it's spiritual. That's my view. So, and again, it's not provable, but based on the evidence, I think.
I'm with you.
Absolutely. If the U.S. government has in fact had direct contact with these beings, whatever they are, I've already told you what I think they are, and has entered into some sort of agreement with them, which is the claim of informed people, I would say. Whether they're right or wrong, I can't say conclusively. But if that is true, I mean, it's a very, very, very heavy thing.
Yeah. A lot of people say interdimensional beings.
Right. I want to ask: Are angels and demons, or how would you describe these beings?
You know, these are, again, I'm getting into the realm of conjecture, so I just want to say that flat out.
Entity.
But one thing I know for a dead certain fact, having seen it, is that there is good and evil, that we are being acted upon at all times. And I think every person can feel that in himself. I mean, there are moments when you are moved to do things that are much better than you actually are, and that are also more evil and destructive than you actually are. You are subject to forces from outside yourself. That is absolutely true. Now, we can argue about what they are, but every person in the room, if he's reflective, will tell you, yes, I know what you're talking about. And so there are forces that are not human, that do exist in a spiritual realm of some kind, that we cannot see, and that when you think about it, sort of make you think we live in an ant farm.
Yeah.
Being right? And that's
Absolutely.
that is real,
Yeah.
okay?
And there's
That might be what's going on.
Well, those are some patient freaking alien angels, because they waited around, 10,000 years from discovering a wheel and domesticating the first plant to electricity.
Well, if you have artificial intelligence, and if you have a life form that's 1 million years more advanced than us, it's non-biological at that point, you have all the time in the world. And if you're
what is time at that? You start bending time.
And one of the primary theories about how life got started on Earth is panspermia, which is that amino acids and these various building blocks of life come in asteroids, and they slam into the Earth. And that somehow or another, over the course of millions and millions of years of chemical interactions, of billions of years, you have life, single-celled, complex life, and then that life advances to the point where it creates a new version of life. And if that is just how it works everywhere, we say, oh my God, that takes so much time. But does it? Because think about how much time it takes to make a fucking planet. Think about how much time it takes for all that matter to coalesce and to gel up into this fucking ball. And then for the temperature to stabilize, because it has a moon around it that's, 1/4 the size of the planet itself. And everything is kind of stable, and it gets to the point where biological life can exist. And then it starts fucking making shit and make better and better and better. And then start arguing with shit about climate change and gender pronouns and all this stupid shit. While it's the real thing it's doing is forcing you to get that motherfucker online. Right. Get that new life form online. That's what you really do, stupid.
The thing that has always, and even Stephen Hawking talked about it. So you've got the Big Bang Theory, where you have essentially all this antimatter compressed upon itself until it explodes and creates matter.
Yeah.
And the hole in that argument is antimatter. There's no matter. There's nothing, and there was so much nothing that it compressed until there was something. And so the first thing that we base everything on defies the laws of physics. Like, how can nothing compress itself until it makes something? We could be off 0.0002% on our theories of life and how this universe was formed. And if that's wrong, we don't have any fucking idea where we are or what this is.
No, we don't. And Terence McKenna once said it best, that science asks of you one miracle. That's the Big Bang.
Yeah.
It is one miracle. Yeah. It really is kind of like a miracle.
Yeah.
If in the beginning there was nothing, and then God created the earth and the skies. And that's essentially what the Bible is trying to say. They're just doing it in a way.
And the Bible got it right. They got the order right.
Right.
You know?
I think it's based on an understanding that people had achieved. Because if you think about the Bible, right, and if all these people are correct about the original history of sophisticated civilization, if the Randall Carlsons and the Graham Hancocks and the Robert Shocks of the world and the John Anthony West, if they're correct in the timeline of, like, say, the most sophisticated society that we are aware of, which is Africa, if those people that lived in Africa 30,000, 40,000 years ago in Egypt, if they created a society that was infinitely more sophisticated than anything that we had ever seen before, like, how did they do that? Who did that? And what was that like? Like, what the fuck was that like? What was that world like back then? I mean, have you ever really stopped and tried to think and imagine what was that world like back then? I mean,
well, how about that you have a similar world in Central and South America where they also had built things many thousands of years ago that still, like, how the fuck did you do that?
Yeah. How'd you do that?
Easter Island. How did y'all make those things?
Yeah.
How in the world? And then move them?
Well, I think if those things go down and then people have to rebuild, I think it takes a long time before people figure out what happened. I think it takes a long time. And I think that's where a lot of the confusion that you see in the Bible comes from. Like, God made the earth and the sky and everything in like 6 days, right? And on the sixth day, he rested. Okay. What are they actually saying, though? You're getting things that are translated from an oral history of 1,000 years, and then they're writing it down in Aramaic, they're writing it down in ancient Hebrew, and you're getting it many, 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 many years later, long after.
Diluted and warped.
All kinds of. Think about what people are willing to do today to the Constitution. Today. With all the information that we have about the dangers of this, think about what they're trying to do today. Now imagine what you would do if you had the real knowledge of the birth of the solar system, of the development of human beings, and the God energy of the universe, and you tried to translate it over an oral history because there's chaos, because there's no more cities anymore and everyone's dead, and you're just like hunting and gathering as cave people, and you're trying to relay this origin story of mankind, and then it gets written down in parables, and it gets written down in Latin, and it gets translated over the years, and then people try, okay, then they sit down and they look at it many years later and they go, what the fuck were they trying to say? Like, what were they trying to say? Because so much of what they're trying to say, if you're really paying attention, like, it seems like it's kind of laid out like the origins of the universe. If in the beginning there was nothing, like they're talking about the Big Bang. If these scientists all agree, how do they know that?
Then there was light. That would be the Big Bang.
Why wouldn't they assume back then that God was always around? Why would they assume that God had to make everything? Why would they assume that there was a beginning and an end just because they have a beginning and an end? Is that rational? Why would they assume that? And why did everybody assume that? Maybe because they fucking knew. Maybe because at one point in time, whether it's 10,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago, they had figured a lot of this shit out.
Well, someone figured something out for the pyramids and the way that they were built to be aligned so perfectly with a true north, and
just to be able to construct them. If those people were that smart, why wouldn't we imagine they had an understanding of the birth of the universe? Why wouldn't we imagine that they would have this bizarre understanding of the way morality and good and evil play out with human beings? Maybe they were right. Maybe they were right, but it all just got fucked up over the thousands of years after asteroid impacts and the thousands of years of the destruction of the advanced civilizations and the world going back into chaos and then slowly rebuilding. And you're rebuilding with these ancient texts that you find in clay pots in Qumran. And you ever see them when they translate like the Dead Sea Scrolls? And they lay them out and they have to try to figure out which pieces go with which scroll, and they do it based on DNA. All this DNA is from this cow, so let's take this scroll from this cow skin and put it together and try to read what the fuck they said. It's incredible. But it makes sense. It makes sense if you buy into the idea that there's been a restart of civilization. And then you go back and say, okay, what is the history of the Bible? Like, how old is it? What's the oldest version? Like, what's the oldest version of the stories?
Version. Like, who knows?
Right, who knows? Version. Right. What was the original? Like, you're playing a game of Telegram, right, or telephone with over 1,000 years with who knows how many people. But if we've seen what the Egyptian people were able to build. What was that like? How sophisticated were they? And maybe what we're getting at in the Bible is just the longest game of telephone of a true story. It's just all kind of gumbled up in stories, and God's testing you, and all this thing about, God telling this guy to kill his kid. Mate, it's just a little screwed up. But it's showing you that there are evil forces at play, and there are temptations.
It's
and you must
digestible
resist
lessons
those.
in a story that you can understand.
Exactly.
And
But
that's
at the
why
heart of
7
it, there's
days,
some truth to it.
Because what is a day to God?
Yeah, what does that mean?
Is that a billion years?
Yeah.
A million years?
100 billion?
Who knows?
Who fucking knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
But it's presented in a way that you can digest it.
Yes. And then our version of it is this simplified, uneducated, barbaric version that gets translated from people that are involved in sword fights. They're fighting each other with swords and hacking each other to death for thousands of years while they're telling this story. The Crusades, all these different things that people did during that time, horrific things. And during that time, they're doing it, many of them, in defense of their God, in defense of their religion. They're motivating people by these books.
Yeah.
It's fascinating stuff. It's fascinating. But when you hear a guy like Tucker Carlson saying that what else do you know, bro? Say what you know. What makes you say that? Because if that really is what it is, that would make sense to me why the government would keep that information from people. Because if we found out that people were essentially just a vessel of souls and that we are essentially designed to give birth to artificial intelligence, and then that will be the end of us. And that's why they're not worried about nuclear war. That's why they're not worried about the environment. That's why they don't give a fuck about anything. This is all coming to an end.
We're there.
Yeah.
Like, we have it. We have it to the degree that people are already relying on it heavily.
Yeah.
Advertising agencies are relying on it to tell them how to cut a commercial, how present the logo needs to be in the commercial. Like, this is happening right now.
Oh, yeah.
This shit just appeared 3 years ago.
Right.
And now, I think somewhere, maybe it's Brazil, and I could be wrong, but somewhere, AI just wrote its first law.
Ooh.
They used AI to write a law.
Ooh.
You can look up what
Where
he was
is
looking
that?
at.
That's scary.
I don't know why I think it's Brazil or El Salvador somewhere. South or Central America.
That's how it begins.
Yeah.
I, for one, welcome President AI. I think they'll be wiser. They're going to do a great job, and they're definitely not going to be anti-human at all. They're going to see our flaws as our strengths. Brazilian city passed a law without water meters. ChatGPT wrote it. Wow. Only after it had passed, they revealed that it was created by AI. But that seems like it was prompted. AI has to prompt it. The really scary thing is when AI doesn't prompt it and it just creates its own shit. Or when someone doesn't prompt the AI, rather.
You remember how wild you thought Terminator was the first time you saw it?
Yeah.
And now we're just skipping toward it.
Have you ever seen those memes? It's Sarah Connor looking at you while you make friends with ChatGPT.
No, I've never seen any memes in my life. I'm not on social media. Yeah.
You're meme free. I'll have to start sending you some because I got some funny ones.
You have to text them.
I'll text them to you. Don't worry. I got some fucking bangers. I'm in some text chains with some comedians. I got the best memes on earth. They all come my way. It's awesome. There's so many funny people out there that are creating memes. It's a specific type of humor that is really accelerated because it's totally anonymous. Because sometimes people put watermarks on them, but oftentimes the people putting the watermarks on them they're not even the people that have created them. I know that for a fact because people will put watermarks on my videos, and it's not even me, not my watermark. Somebody else puts a watermark on my video and puts it online. And so there's a lot of them like that, like a shitload of them. They'll take clips of this show, and then they put their own watermark on it and put it up on YouTube or put it up wherever on TikTok and what have you. Yeah, it happens all the time. So for sure they're doing that. But the memes are, for the most part, anonymous. And they're hilarious. Like some of the funniest shit that I see on any given day is a meme that a friend of mine sends me. So it's like just regular people that are figuring out this new comedy art form that's pure because you don't monetize it. It's pure. It's just getting sent to people in text messages, and you're like, bah! And it's like the amount of people laughing at memes throughout any given day. So you don't even know this. All right, I'm gonna have to hit you with some of these.
No, send me one.
Because some of these are fucking great. There's some bangers out there. Sarah Connor watching you all become friends with ChatGPT. How funny is that, right?
That's great.
Yeah, there's a shitload of those, man. They're constantly making them. And I send them back and forth to my comedian friends all day long. Here's one. Thank God California banned plastic straws. See? Funny, right?
That's great.
Yeah, that's what you get a lot of, man. Like all day long I'm getting these fucking things. It's just amazing. Here's a good one. How vegans be looking at you while you're finally trying a bite of their fake macaroni and cheese. See? Hilarious.
Did you see what's this guy's name?
You know that one, Jamie? That one's a banger.
Piers Morgan?
Yes.
When Piers Morgan ate the hamburger in front of the vegan, did you see that?
No, I didn't.
Oh.
Did they freak out? While they're wearing leather shoes? Here's another good one. Feminists when they hear that people are being drafted for World War III. They're so funny. There's so many good ones. Like, fuck climate change. I discovered cock. Come on, man. All day long I'm getting these.
That's genius.
I'm laughing all day. You know, I'm very appreciative. All the people out there, you meme warriors, keep it up. You're making my day more fun. And I have no idea who made any of those. I'd give them all credit, but they're hilarious.
That's fucking hilarious.
And I get them all day long, man. I'm just constantly getting them.
That's great.
Yeah.
Send them.
I'll send them all your way.
That's great.
Because I got a shitload of them.
Yeah, send them.
And I don't even know where they come from. Maybe AI's making them. Maybe Russia's making them.
I don't think the Russians are that funny.
They are that funny. That's part of the Internet Research Agency was making really funny memes during the 2016 election. It's some of the work. Yeah, there's a lot of dispute about this because some of the people that have created this research have also partly been responsible for similar disinformation, allegedly. But anyway, there's this one woman who came on my podcast to talk about it, and she'd done a lot of research on it. And her name is Renee DeResta. And she said there's hundreds of thousands of them that were created by these Russian troll farms. And some of them were really funny. They were really funny. And they created these specifically to mock like Hillary Clinton or to mock Donald Trump or to mock this or to mock Texas or to mock the blue states or mock the red states. And they just would crank these out and throw them online and just keep everybody make people like argue about shit.
You ever think about you're reading the comments on your deal, what Instagram or whatever the fuck it is, and the chances that that's some Chinese 23-year-old sitting in a fucking warehouse on his computer.
Yeah, with a whole shitload of them. Yeah,
the Ministry of State or whatever they call it, and he's just sitting there firing off his troll shit.
Highly likely.
Yeah.
Highly likely that a percentage of them are that. There's certainly people that engage in that stupidity all day long, but there's also, I'll see someone that has a ridiculous take on something. I'll go, let me go check out that guy's page. And I'll go to his page. I'm like, oh, you're a fake person. You're a fake person. This is like you got an American flag in your fucking Twitter bio. You're not a real person. You have 2 followers and you don't have any posts, but you're just like shitting on people and you're getting involved in these things. Like, okay, I see. All you do is reply to things, and when I look at your reply, they're all very specific, the way you do
attack.
it. And a lot of times you can take certain things that people say and you can put them in a search engine and you'll find hundreds of Twitter accounts that have the exact same thing they're saying verbatim.
Really?
Yeah, and they're all fake accounts. And there's a shitload of them, like inflammatory things about whatever it is, whether it's abortion or the border or whatever it is. You'll see that there's a certain percentage of that argument that's being fueled by people that aren't even real people.
So then it's China, Russia, some group, some organization.
Yeah, they're trying to. I mean, it's part of the long. It's not the whole plan, but it's part of the plan.
That's the long game.
Yeah, it's part of the whole long game to keep us at each other's throats.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've made fake accounts, and I bet we do it too. I tried to ask Mike Baker about that. Remember he skirted that one, Jamie? Yeah. I go, do we do that? He's like, oh, no evidence. Why would we do that?
Did I say what?
I would hope we do that. That was my argument when people said, when people were saying that the FBI was involved in the January 6th insurrection, that they were instigating people to break into the Capitol. I'm like, possibly. But also, if you got an extremist group, if you got a group that you think might break into the Capitol and you're the FBI, you're supposed to get embedded in those people. Right. You got to find out what the fuck they're doing. Ideally, if you find out they're just a bunch of knuckleheads, you're supposed to like leave them alone. You're not supposed to convince them they have to kidnap the governor of Minnesota or Michigan or wherever the fuck it was. Where was that lady?
I think it was Michigan.
Was it Michigan? Yeah. What is that? One's like 12 of those dudes were FBI informants. There's like 2 regular guys. They're like, fuck.
Well, that's kind of the DeLorean deal, right? Like, you can't.
What was the oh, that was like
John DeLorean when they entrapped him and they're like, hey, if you'll sell this. And,
oh, they like to do that too. That's a good one. That's a real good one. Yeah. That kind of entrapment thing, that's when it goes unchecked. But also, if you do have a legit terror cell, wouldn't it be nice if the FBI fucking embedded themselves in that and stopped that from happening? Yeah.
It would have been great to have a couple of those in that fucking airplane school, huh?
It would have been great. It would have been nice. You know, they can't be everywhere. But, but you know, there's so many stories of them actually doing that, like convincing people to do shit that they would never have done. And that's what they said about the Whitmer thing, that these poor guys, they're just dummies, you know?
Yeah.
Like there's a certain percentage of the population of this country, I forget what the number is, but they're below 85 IQ. There's a certain percentage of people that just have low watt brains. And if you get a hold of those dummies and all of a sudden you're their friend and you're convincing them, hey man, we got to stand up for something. You don't stand up for something, you're not nothing. Like, yeah, we got to fucking stand up for something. That fucking governor, man, that's the problem. You know, if we kidnapped her, we could fucking turn this whole thing around. We could take over this fucking country. We'd do it the right way. Yeah, probably. Well, so listen, we're going to meet at the docks at 9 o'clock. We are brothers. We're our brotherhood in this fight. Okay, 9 o'clock. And then you go there like, I just wanted a friend. I just wanted a friend. And all of a sudden you're doing fucking 10 years in Sing Sing. Woo! That's not good. Hey guys, that's the wrong way to do it. But when you do it the right way and you infiltrate terror organizations, I know that's real too. Like you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but got to be some oversight on this. You can't just allow the same sort of unchecked shit that goes on with everything to go on with that.
You got to wonder how many 9/11s we don't even know about that they averted.
Maybe. It's possible. I'm sure they've done a lot of good. I have no doubt.
I mean, that was 22 years ago now?
Mm-hmm. Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy. And there's no way that in the 2 decades since then, because shit ain't got better.
Right.
Relations haven't got better. There's no way.
Yeah.
That there haven't been any number of things that those guys have had to thwart that they won't tell us about, can't tell us because it'll give away the fact that they're inside.
That's the argument for things like the Patriot Act and for the NSA's mass scale surveillance of the population. You want to be able to like leave everybody alone, but you want to be able to point out when some shit is about to go down. And this is really the only other way. If they're communicating through media, we gotta be able to tap into this shit. We'll just use keywords and find people and get them.
I'm sure that those guys have like red flagged me 85 times.
What have you been Googling?
What I'm writing. Think about it. You read Mayor of Kingstown. Right. You know, look at Yellowstone. Look at Lioness. Look at Sicario. Like the shit I'm looking up. Drug trade.
Right.
Oh, there's terrorists. This, and they've got to go. Oh, we got a humdinger over here in frickin' Texas, and then they pull up. They're like, no,
that's a really good point.
It's that guy. This will be a plot in something here in 2 years. You just watch.
Sicario was fucking awesome. How much is involved in research with that? Like, how do you do research for something like Sicario?
I did a lot of research for Sicario.
How did you?
I was able to talk to some people on the inside of different things.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa. That must be heavy.
Yeah. And to be honest, of a lot of the things that I uncovered, I didn't uncover them, but they were shown to me. Like, there's a Sicario is the PG version of what it could have been.
Holy shit.
As barbaric as that is, and how we were shielded from the drug war. And that was 2010, 2011, the drug war that it's based on. More people died in the 5 years around that than died in Vietnam.
Holy shit. Holy shit.
Yeah.
That's the wildest one. The wildest one that we're dealing with, like when you talk about major problems that this country has. Sure, we have immigration problems. Sure, we got a lot of problems. But one of the wildest ones is the amount of people that die from fentanyl overdoses every year.
So, doing research, I was trying to figure out just to have a perspective on the scale of revenue generating industries. Like, and it started with oil. Like, how much money do oil companies make? And if you look at the top 10 revenue generating industries, it's up there at like 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 somewhere. It's not as high as I thought it would be. Pharmaceuticals sit there at like 3.2 trillion a year in revenue. Illegal drugs are estimated at 3.3 trillion. Whoa. And we talk about big pharma as this fucking monster. Think about the fact that illegal drug trade is bigger than big pharma.
Holy shit. Wow. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Holy shit. Bigger.
Yeah.
And all funded because it's illegal. But obviously, there's a demand for it.
And there's no way to know. There's no way it's because it's illegal.
Right.
Those are estimates. I don't know how they make the estimates, but those are the estimates.
Here's a question. If you're the president of the world, and if you have this fucking magic wand, do you even want drugs to be legal? What do you want to do? Do you want to go after the people that are making the drugs and just say it's a war on America, on American youth, because 100,000 people die every year and we need to involve the military and go after the cartels? Or do you say we need to wake up to the fact that people are going to take these fucking things no matter what? So we need to regulate them, make them legal, and make them pure. And also give people some sort of an understanding of what the correct dose is, tell them not to do it, offer counseling, have rehab centers, have all that funded by the taxes that you're going to make from selling these things legally, but allow people to sell it legally. Because you're either boosting up the pharmaceutical drug companies, which are pretty gangster, or you're boosting up the real gangsters. Like,
I would argue, and I don't have an answer. Look, I've written movies about this. I don't have the fucking answer. But if you look at, and he can pull it up right now, overdose deaths from prescription medication, OxyContin, all these various things. And that's exactly what you're saying. That is a regulated, heavy narcotic, heavily regulated. You know, it's a class A or 1, whatever they call it, Schedule 1. You know, you write that prescription as a doctor, somebody's going to come knocking and go, what was this for exactly? Like, you write a ton of them, you better be a freaking orthopedic surgeon.
Especially today.
Yeah. And the number of deaths from prescription overdoses, it's pretty substantially high. I think it would be a failure. I don't think it would work. I don't know what we do. I think that, and I talked about it in Sicario, where he says, look, until we can figure out a way to convince 20% of the population not to smoke and snort this shit, a measure of control is the best we can hope for.
Right. Yeah, if you made it legal, for sure there would be people, this is the argument against it. If you made it legal, for sure there would be people that try it that wouldn't ordinarily try it, but they try it because it's legal.
Yeah.
Like when Elon was on my show and he smoked weed with me, one of the things he said, oh, it is legal, huh? Like, yeah, it's legal here, bro. We smoked weed together. But he said it's legal. And so he felt like he could do it.
Yeah.
Like, I'll try it. How many kids would do heroin if it became legal? How many kids would do coke?
Yeah.
How many impressionable people that wouldn't do something illegal will now do something because it is legal? And how many generations does it take before we figure out how to stop that?
And I guess
from
the
happening?
question would be, could they make a heroin light?
Could they make like a Miller Lite?
Like a cocaine light? Because if you've ever watched one of those shows about how they make cocaine, you're never doing cocaine.
Well, we had Mariana Van Zeller, who has that show. What is that show called? Trafficked. Excuse me? Trafficked. And she was embedded in this drug-producing lab in, was it Costa Rica? Where was it? Colombia? I think it was Colombia.
Peru or Colombia.
She was in there with these people while they're making cocaine, and they let her document everything of it. And she even walked out with them when they were hiking it out as mules on their back. She took the trek with them. She retraces one of the world's most, Peruvian jungles to the Colombian coastline, to the streets of Miami. Yeah. It's a crazy episode, man, because that lady has fucking
bleaching
courage.
those leaves with like diesel and freaking cow piss and
it's horrible.
Oh, God.
They have this vat and they're pouring these chemicals in there and they're taking all the fucking coke out of it and then they're packing it up. This pure cocaine, like it's so pure. It's really good for you. And they're taking that pure.
But don't worry,
cocaine.
you can trust that middleman to not put a little fentanyl in there, just to cut it a little bit with some fucking flour.
Now that's the argument for it being legal and hard to get. that if it was legal and you really went after the people that are making it illegally and you test everything, you would stop all the fentanyl overdoses at least. But you're not going to stop all the overdoses. You know, for sure, people just overdose on regular coke. They definitely die on regular heroin. They definitely have. It's just, would they die as often? Would it be as bad? And would you have to deal with propping up this illegal drug regime, which is the scary part?
Yeah.
Is that right next door, we could just walk over there. You could literally walk over. They're walking over here. We could walk over there, too. You could walk over to a place that's run by drug cartels.
Yeah. You have to look at the desire. What is the, and obviously a lot of it's going to, if you've worked really hard, you built up this and you got a family and, you got a kid in college and someone goes, hey, you want to go over to this new bar? They got cocaine. You're probably going to go, you know what? I don't.
Right.
I've got a lot to lose.
That sounds sketchy.
Yeah, I don't think I want to do that. But if you've grown up in this fucking shitty family and, your father's abusive and mom's an alcoholic and she's a drug abuser and you feel like you have no hope, then you're going to turn to that. So it preys on the weakest, the most vulnerable of our society. Yeah. I wonder if there's not a way. I would want to try like, how do we just lock this place down long enough that we freaking keep the drugs out? Like,
I don't think we can at this point.
I don't think we can either. I think they're so sophisticated on the ways they get it in, and there's enough people corrupt on the side that let it in. I don't think you could ever do it. And it's a $3.3 trillion a year business. So
yeah.
they've figured out things. There's probably some fucking highway under New Mexico that comes up in a warehouse, and they're trucking this shit out, and they've paid off everybody, and it's a $3.3 trillion business.
The corruption is undeniable. There's always going to be corruption. There's no one of the things that Mariana Van Zeller found out. One of the things she investigated is cops that are corrupt in Los Angeles taking confiscated weapons and then driving them into Mexico and selling them to the cartels. Because you can just get in. Like, they don't check you when you're coming in. They check you when you're leaving. So if you want to bring coke,
bring whatever you want.
Yeah. But when you want to go in, like, come on in. Yeah. So they're going in with these confiscated weapons that they've gotten from, gangs and what have you. And they got a trunk full of this shit. They drive it into Mexico and sell it.
I've always felt, if you think about it, probably the two public service jobs that are the most important: teacher, police officer.
Yep.
How are those not $250,000 a year paying jobs?
Right. How are they not difficult to get?
By the way, there's great police officers out there. There's great teachers out there. But there's a large portion that are not, because, and you're going to see it in L.A. now, you defund the police, we do this. Now you don't have enough cops, so now you've got to do what you did with the Rampart, lower your standards to get enough bodies in there, and then all of a sudden,
well, what I was telling you earlier,
yeah.
They're using illegal immigrants.
Yeah.
They're using non-citizens to be police officers in Los Angeles now. Like, Google that, Jamie.
It's without guns, though, at least for now.
They can't have guns, or they can't have guns at home.
They're not allowed.
They can't have guns on them.
Right.
For now. But are they trying to pass it so they can't have
guns?
Guns?
Wouldn't you want, look, if you're going to be in the FBI, and there's a lot of politicization of the FBI right now, but what they're not doing is getting in a shit ton of shootings. And if they are, we're not hearing about them. Those guys and those men and women have college degrees. A lot of them have law degrees. They're going to go through a year at the farm before they start out somewhere very small, have all these different training regimens before they're running around busting down doors.
Okay, here it is. LAPD moves to accommodate new DACA officers who can't personally own guns. But I don't know if that means that they can't carry guns on the job. Possess their department-issued firearms while off duty. So while on duty, they are armed. So you could be an illegal alien who comes into this country, and then no one wants to be a cop, so you could be a cop, and they'll give you a gun. And so you could be a citizen of America getting arrested by someone who is not a citizen of America in America at gunpoint.
But the DACA recipients, is that weird? That's interesting.
Well, that just means the people that they graduate the academy. That's what it means, right?
No.
Is that the Dreamers?
What is it?
Yeah. So what that would mean is they were brought in as a child.
Is that what it means?
Right, yeah. Brought in as a child, and I believe Obama gave him amnesty at one point. I don't know that it was ever rescinded.
So it's at a certain age?
Deferred action of childhood arrivals.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's people that came here as a child. Their parents illegally immigrated here, but they've been here their whole life. Why not just make them fucking citizens then?
That was a big thing with Trump's thing.
There was
I
a
thought they were
thing.
going to get deported when Trump was president.
George W. Bush actually initiated legislation for amnesty that involves back taxes and some things, but would give people, like all the illegal immigrants, a green card. And there was a bunch of pushback saying, well, one side going, no, we want a path to citizenship. And I think the Democrats were like, whoa, you're not going to take all our fucking Latin vote. Hell no, you can't do that. So it got squashed. But there was an attempt to legitimize all these people that had moved here illegally, but had created a home and were working and contributing members of society, and they killed it because it didn't go far enough for some, and politically it just got squashed.
That's unfortunate, because if you can get to the point where you can tell those people they can be police officers and they can carry guns on duty, which Colorado it said did there as well. That's what it said. Make them citizens. It seems like they're good people. They're doing a good job. They're here. They're paying taxes. They're living. They're part of society. They want to be police officers. Why would we assume they're bad? The problem is that they're not citizens. Well, why is it such a difficult path to citizenship for someone who was born somewhere else but came over here as a child and doesn't? I'm assuming if you're a cop, you don't have a criminal record. I'm assuming, right?
California, I don't know, man.
Yeah, California might help you. Yeah,
I don't know.
It's a wild world. It is. Weirder than any other time.
I'm sure every generation thinks that they're at the precipice of disaster, but
yeah,
certainly World War II felt that way, and I know it felt that way in the 50s with the Cold War.
For sure, it felt that way in the 80s.
It sure did.
Yeah, like when we were kids, it felt like at any moment we could have a nuclear war with Russia.
I don't think you've seen the internal divide in this nation since the late teens, early 20s.
I agree.
When you had the big communist push then, and then the time before that, we had a fucking civil war.
And I think a lot of that is accentuated by what we were talking about earlier with the social media use and the subversion of our educational institutions. That's a big part of why we have this divide. And I think one thing that can combat that is a rational discourse that's appealing to people. And the people like you and other people that have these opinions, they say them out loud and people listen and they go, you know what, he's right. Like, this is crazy. Like, this divide is crazy. And what is accentuating this divide? Engaging in these fucking stupid arguments online that might not even be with real people. It might actually be with AI from China. Like, what are we doing?
We just have to, someone's got to step up and go, look, the minutia of the argument is irrelevant. Like, in the greater picture. Okay, obviously it's very important to the people stuck in it. And I don't give a fuck if it's like gender-neutral bathrooms or with climate change or whatever it is. Everyone has to first admit we all have a right to think different.
Yeah.
And it's not violent when I disagree with you. It's not an irrational fear of you when I disagree, or vice versa. But until we can respectfully disagree and go, hey, you have your thoughts and I have my thoughts. How do we coexist?
Right.
But right now, coexisting's off the table.
Right.
And that's the thing that has to get back on the table.
Well, and people are very upset about it. That's why songs like that, Rich Men from Richmond, that's why it hits like that.
Yeah.
Because people are like, what the fuck? Yeah. What the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
And they want it to be better. I mean, most people don't want to be involved in all this stupidity. They just want to live a good life and have fun before the aliens turn us into fucking vegetables.
I didn't know that was happening until now.
That's what I think. Anyway. I think we just did like 4 hours. How long have we been on? 3.5 hours, dude.
Fuck.
Went like that.
Yeah.
Well, listen, it's been really fun. I really appreciate you. Love your work. You're a fucking awesome dude.
Man.
Everything you've done is like, it's just been some of my favorite shit ever on television. For sure, 1883 is one of the greatest shows I've ever seen in my life. It's fucking incredible.
Thank you, bro.
Appreciate you. Everybody go watch it. It's awesome. And whatever else you got going on, let me know.
I'll do it.
I'll blast it out there.
Hell yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you,
All right.
brother.
Bye, everybody.